All right, here we go. Drive time, Wednesday afternoon style. 15 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. It has been a gorgeous day, beautiful day. 60 degrees and sunny here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. That first 60 degrees sunny day in March just hits a little different. Now, we are going to get a little rain and snow over the next 48 hours. Looks like it's going to be a good storm up in the mountains, and then we're back to some sunny conditions over the weekend and through next week. Happy Wednesday. You are halfway through that work week. You're one day closer to the weekend. Got a lot to do on a Wednesday show. The Utah Jazz are back in action tonight. They got a little three-game East Coast road trip, I believe. It starts in Philly. Jazz Philly tonight. The Utah Mammoth are off. Got a good win last night over Washington. They're going to take on Philly as well. Looks like the Jazz and the Mammoth will be in the city of brotherly love. That's a game's tomorrow for the Mammoth at 5 o'clock Mountain Time. So we'll get to some the latest in pro hockey, latest, of course, in the NBA. Free agency in the NFL is 5 days away. The Dallas Cowboys have restructured the deal of Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb to actually get under the cap. They were $55 million over, and now they're under. Stephon Diggs has been released by the New England Patriots, who have their eye on DJ Moore, according to reports. And Trent McDuffie is on his way to the Rams. So Chiefs making some moves. They get some extra draft capital. Looks like Kansas City's going to try to pivot a little bit and go a little bit younger as the NFL draft is just a few weeks away. So a lot of NFL news to get to in preparation of free agency and preparation of the draft. We'll keep you up to date on anything that goes down while we're on air today. Not a good night last night if you are a college basketball team from the state of Utah. The Utes' final home game of the season, it was awful. It was a pretty unexcusable performance, in my opinion. Colorado is bad this year. They're not even average. That's a bad team. They got a good freshman. And Colorado doubled up Utah in the first half. It was 50-25 at halftime. Utah pulled within 10 with about 8.5 minutes left, but not near enough. And Colorado runs Utah off their home floor 92-78. The Utes will finish off their regular season against Baylor, 10-20, 2-15 in Big Ten play. We all thought it was going to be a struggle this year. I don't know how many of us thought they would be the worst team in the Big 12. But we'll get to some college basketball in the show. A curious slide for Brigham Young University. It has been really, really surprising to watch this team just completely fold down the stretch. Now, with Dawson Baker and Richie Saunders, 16-1 to start the year. They were a top 10 type team on paper. They've lost 3 straight. They've lost 4 of 5. They're 4-9 in their last 13, and they got run off the floor by Cincinnati last night, and now sit at 8-9 in Big 12 play. I don't think they're in danger of missing the tournament. I mean, they're going to close out with Texas Tech and Provo. It'll be senior night down in Provo. Texas Tech, a really good team. And then it's the Big 12 tournament. I don't know what would happen if BYU lost to Tech and then lost in the first round of the Big 12 tournament. I still think they make it in, but I can't even believe we're having the debate. I mean, this was a preseason potential Elite 8, Final Four type talent team on paper, and it just has not gone well for them. Utah State, it's a weird matchup for the Aggies, who still are in position to win the Mountain West Conference regular season title. But 2 of their league losses are to UNLV, and one was in Logan, and they got smashed last night, 92-65. It was really weird. They still have a slight lead over New Mexico, and they're going to play New Mexico to finish off the league calendar. So still a very realistic chance for Utah State to win the Mountain West. All right. One day closer to the weekend, RSL is on the road taking on Atlanta. Injuries are still plaguing Real Salt Lake. I believe they're going to be without Victor Olatunji once again and Diego Luna once again. I think we're going to see the debut, at least in the starting 11, of Giavogi, the new designated striker. So we'll talk some RSL on the show today as well. So busy show. Good to have you guys with us on this Wednesday afternoon. Pablo Mastroeni will be our first guest right out of the gates. We'll get the health update for RSL. We'll talk about the dominance over Seattle and what they need to do against a tricky Atlanta side in a really tough place to play. 99 days away from the start of the World Cup. Pablo played in a couple of World Cups. Might get a little World Cup action in with Pablo today. An old buddy of mine. We did Jazz pre-half and post for a number of years. He played at Utah State and then had a really nice pro career mostly overseas. But Spencer Nelson, one of the nicest dudes you will ever meet, fan of dad jokes, and Justin Bieber, by the way. He's going to stop by today. Tim McMahon, Ban McMahon on the program for the latest in the NBA. There's a big one at the Garden tonight. Oklahoma City is taking on the Knicks. 5 o'clock Mountain Time. New York has won, I think, 5 of 6. They're playing better. Shea will play. He sat last night because they played Chicago, and Chicago is unserious, kind of like the Utah Jazz. And then Richard Smith live in studio during the 4 o'clock hour, and then we'll kind of go from there. So good guest list today. Bounce around with a bunch of different topics. Pablo Mastroianni, Spencer Nelson, Tim McMahon, Richard Smith, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. And pulling double duty today, producing Sean's show, is Porter Larson. How much gas do you have for the afternoon?
I'm a marathon man. We're good.
Are you really?
Not really. Okay. I've ran one marathon unofficially.
Didn't you have some sort of audacious running goal a year ago, if I remember correctly?
So every year, I try to get 1,000 miles in, right? And last year, I was quite literally exactly a marathon behind schedule on the last day of the year. So I ran a marathon, jogged, walked, rolled a marathon.
Just complete it. It doesn't matter. If you do that thing, that's one thing I've never had any desire to do. I don't think I ever will, but a tremendous amount of respect for people that want to do that and therefore compromise their health because it's actually not good for you at all.
It's not too late.
I will not
try it.
No. If I get around the block with Duke, see, I take Duke to the park so he can run with other dogs because I enjoy a good walk from time to time, but I'm not going to go hiking with you. I do not want to go running with you. I will take a leisurely stroll on a nice day, but no part of me wants to become like a distance runner.
Okay. No hikes either? Not even like...
Look, here's the thing. I enjoy a nice hike from time to time, but I feel like it's become really cool to claim that you're like super into hiking.
You're not wrong.
It's just like, let's go on a nice hike, but I don't want to like be super cold. Okay. So I want a nice day. I don't want to traverse like mud. I just want a nice hike. Up the canyon is fine with me.
More of a nature walk.
A nature walk is a good way to put that.
I respect that because, when you try to get to like some of the peaks, it becomes less enjoyable.
Yeah.
You have to really be about the result rather than the journey.
And I understand there's a life lesson in there. The harder the climb, the better the views.
There you go.
But I'm good with fine views after a lovely walk.
Okay.
Deal?
I understand you.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. So thank you for seeing me and hearing me.
You are seen.
I have learned the language of these. You know what? We're not going to go there today, okay? But thank you for seeing me. Our first guest, Pablo Mastroianni, right out of the gates, talk a little RSL. But before Pablo stops by, courtesy of our good friends, your good friends too at Prize Picks, it's time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN 700 with Prize Picks.
All right, shoot your shot on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right, Prize Picks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5. Prize Picks makes every dunk, every dime, and every board that much more exciting, so don't miss the chance to get started on America's #1 app for sports. New feature alert. Prize Picks now has early payouts. If your player gets off to a hot start, you now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. It's available in Utah. So no worries there. Step number 1 is you download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5. Prize Picks, it is good to be right. All right. Not a good night if you play college basketball in the state of Utah. So let's kind of go down the list here. We'll start with the Utes. The final game of the regular season at Baylor, 3 o'clock on Saturday, and then it's time for the Big 12 tournament. And the bottom line is this entire year, I think even though we all expected it to be rough, it's probably fine to admit that it was worse than I think most any of us thought. Now, I know that the coaches had a little bit of an inkling that this was going to be a long, long path. And every single night, and by every single night, I'll just focus in on league play because the non-con schedule, it just wasn't, the wins they had were against much lesser teams where they actually did have better talent. Maybe the one exception could be Ole Miss, right? And look, it does come down to a lot of the dynamics of playing Big 12 basketball. And Ole Miss is 12-18. They're the third worst team in the SEC. So, I mean, we've got to even be honest about that. And let's acknowledge how hard this conference is, okay? And we do need to do that. But at the same time, I can't sit here and do the show today and tell you I saw a lot of growth. The team that I watched last night was more or less the team that I've watched all year long, where you have two adequate ball-in-hand lead guard types that can really, really get their own. Neither of them are great playmakers, is the problem. And of course, I'm talking about Terrence Brown and Don McHenry, who are both fine players. I don't know that either of them start for any other team in the Big 12, and they're the two best players on Utah's roster. Don will move on. He is a senior. I'm sure Terrence Brown has played well enough throughout the course of the season that if Utah does not want him back, he can get a nice paycheck playing somewhere else. Kiana Dawes, did we see a lot of growth from Kiana Dawes? 4 points last night, 3 boards, 3 turnovers. Just looked overwhelmed against the size of Colorado. And Colorado, by almost every single metric, isn't even an average team in the Big 12. They've had a rough year. They've got a good freshman. They've got some decent talent. But this is not a team that you should be down 50-25 at halftime to. They doubled up Utah. And it was a confluence and combination of several things, but a lot of it was simply effort, wide open shots, offensive boards, lack of ball movement. And Colorado shot it well, but a lot of them were practice shots. Way too much inconsistency from this roster, not enough will and want to, and essentially we'll see what this group can do in the offseason. And by this group, I mean Alex Jensen and his assistant coaches and Wes Wilcox, who is now tasked with building a roster that can at least be mid-tier in the Big 12. Nobody's asking you to go win the league next year. If you've paid attention to college basketball, if you've been watching Big 12 basketball, and last night the Big 12 was wild. But there are only a few teams that really weren't in the mix all year long, and Utah was one of them. It was basically Utah and K-State. K-State 3-14, Utah 2-15. One more chance to get a win prior to the start of the Big 12 tournament. Now, the more surprising story. So I want to be clear. I am surprised that we didn't see more upward trajectory and growth from Utah basketball. And I can't sit here and say that I did. I'd be lying to you. Far more surprised at where we're at with BYU, who prior to the start of the season, most people thought was maybe even a top 5 or 6 team in America, with the number 1 recruit in A.J. DiBonsa, who still is in the mix to win Conference Player of the Year, by the way. I'm not sure if he's going to, because this drop and fall from BYU is stunning. They've lost 3 straight games. They've lost 4 of 5. They're 4-9 in their last 13. Out of the top 25. They're below 500 in conference play. And, of course, with Richie Saunders and Dawson Baker, they get off to a 16-1 start. They nearly beat UConn and Boston. They beat a good Wisconsin team, okay? And they really weren't, even the games they were losing, okay? They got run a little bit by Texas Tech, but they're punch for punch with Arizona, who might be the best team in the country. Punch for punch with Kansas on the road. More or less same thing with Houston. That game got away from them a little bit at the end. Beating Iowa State, that's their best win of the year by far, and that was without Richie Saunders or Dawson Baker. This team, to me, is playing like their main goal is to let A.J. DiBonsa showcase his NBA talent. It's isolation with A.J., it's isolation with Rob Wright. They can't guard the paint, they don't guard the rim, they don't share the basketball. They had 8 assists last night. Cincinnati had 24. And if they lose to Tech in Provo on Saturday and then lose in the first round of the Big 12 tournament, there is a legitimate possibility that a team most people thought could knock on the door of a Final Four or an Elite Eight might not even make it into the NCAA tournament. It's been a wild thing to witness. Finally, I don't know what it is with UNLV for Utah State, but Utah State has been the beast of the Mountain West Conference, and I still think they're going to win the thing because they get New Mexico up in Logan on Saturday. But Utah State lost to UNLV in Logan by 10, and they lost last night in Vegas by 1,000,000, 92-65. So rough night for our local college basketball teams. Sean and I were talking about this earlier. I think it's time to do away with senior night. There are 22 seniors who will play their final basketball game for the team they started their career with in college basketball. Pretty wild number. We'll get with Spencer Nelson coming up in a bit to talk about this, but we'll catch our first break of a Wednesday show. Get you ready for a big match for RSL coming up this weekend. Pablo Mastroeni is our first guest on a Wednesday, so keep it here on ESPN 700. RSL hits the road this weekend to play at a pretty tricky place in Atlanta after sending Seattle back home with yet another loss. 99 days away from the World Cup beginning. Fun time for soccer fans. Our guy Pablo Mastroeni hops on the show on a Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, Pobs. How are you, man?
Happy Wednesday, Spence. Doing great, man. Sunshine in March. I'll take it every day of the week.
I have a really weird question right out of the gates. I was thinking about this because during the break, I just smashed an Uncrustable, almonds, and some string cheese. What your daily snacks that gives you energy throughout the day? What does that look like?
Yeah, to be fair, I don't snack anymore. And I started feeling that at 45. I started realizing that body's over and done with, and I have to prepare for the next phase. And so I've been really conscious of not snacking. So I drink a lot of green tea and a lot of coffee to keep me going between meals.
See, okay, you know what? We're going to do 20 minutes on Pablo's diet here. You have to help me. I thought you were supposed to kind of snack a little bit throughout the day. Am I misunderstanding like the way you're supposed to approach a diet?
No, I think everyone's body is different. I just know what works for me. And, again, if I don't work out and I start snacking throughout the day, then it just becomes, I just start to notice like change so quickly and not in a good way. So I've just gone to a heavy protein diet. Biggest meal is probably breakfast. The next lightest meal is lunch. And then I probably eat the smallest meal at dinner. And they're all probably, 80-20 protein to veg and fruit. So I try to stay away from the refined carbs and just all the stuff that we know that it's really hard to do. But so I've made it kind of like a discipline for me.
Have you been listening to the Andrew Huberman podcast? I want you to be honest with me.
I have.
Okay.
Well, not recently, but he's definitely on there, and he's definitely saying some of those things for sure. I've heard him. He's actually quite bright. Because
if I remember correctly, you're a weighted vest guy as well, yes?
Yeah, rucking. Yeah, I really enjoy that, and it does a little bit of both. It does the strength because you're carrying a 50-pound sack, but it also it gets the cardio going too, especially when you're doing hills. So I think I got that from him, or maybe it was maybe it was a book I got it from. But I'm my own lab rat, and I just figure out what works for me and what feels good, and just kind of go with it.
Do you get early sunlight exposure to begin your circadian rhythm? See? Yep. I knew it. I could tell.
I do not do the cold plunge, though.
Okay.
I do not do the cold plunge.
All right. Anyway, for the listeners that are holding on, thank you. We'll move on. We got to start with a health update. We just did the Pablo health update, but and you share whatever you want, okay? And then keep to yourself what you want as well. But it was wild to see that first lineup slide against Vancouver, and then I was expecting to see, and we did get some reinforcements against Seattle. But where are we at right now, Pablo, with both health and then visa issues?
Yeah, we're pretty much in the same boat, Spence. Now we got Morgan, who had another full week of training under his belt, and he should be in a position to start if that's the way we go. And then everyone else is pretty much the same. Stein, again, he's had his first 3 training sessions with the team in 2026, so he's still a little ways behind from just a sharpness, fitness perspective. But hopefully we can get him a couple minutes, if not this weekend, the following weekend. And everyone else is, Luna's hopefully going to hit the grass next week. Victor is actually on the grass now, and it seems to be doing all right with the goggles, and the way his eye feels has been better. Kobe Henry is now on the grass and joining in part-time. So slowly but surely we're getting guys in, and the squad will continue to grow as the time goes on.
Let me follow up about Diego, because, of course, it is a big summer for him, and you know what the experience of playing in a World Cup is and what that can mean for your career. So just help us understand how that dynamic might be coming into play when it comes to just monitoring how close he is to coming back.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think one of the things is when they went and looked at his MCL, they also saw other issues going on with his knee. And so we could have done nothing, and he would have probably been available for this game in Atlanta. But given that it's a really important year, and it's something that he's going to have to continue to to keep an eye on as far as the structure of his knee. They went in and did another, I think, PRP, which requires 2 weeks of being idle. And so we went ahead and did that, just knowing what he's about to, making sure that we put him in the best position to be successful, getting to the World Cup and then actually playing in the World Cup. And so we were really cautious with that. And I think that's what's caused a little bit of delay. But he's been on the field jogging, which is a good sign. And now it's really, when you have the MCL issues, it's in soccer, it's really tough because any inside of the foot tackle or at times a pass off the edge of the big toe will zing that MCL. So we've got to be, again, really deliberate as to how we bring him back so he's not only healthy for us in the next month and a half, but he's also ready to go with U.S. teams.
It feels like an MCL issue is pretty commonplace in soccer. I have no science to back. Oh, okay. It is then. Okay.
It is really common.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Again, for example, if someone takes a shot and you stick out your foot and it hits off the big toe, well, the first thing that goes is that knee joint and it goes outward and it stretches that MCL. So you can get it defending, you can get it passing it like wrong off the end of your toe, or you can go into a tackle where you're a little bit loosey-goosey with your ankle, and then the MCL takes the brunt of it. So there's a bunch of different mechanisms in soccer that lend themselves to MCL issues.
Okay. What have you learned about Morgan Gilavogui since he's been on the ground? We did see him for a few minutes against Seattle. An impressive-looking player from my perspective, but tell me what you've learned about him.
Yeah, well, again, we had him in for about 7 days in California, or maybe 10 days, and what I'll tell you is he's got the physical capacity of a Xavier Gozo, which is really impressive. And one of the things that was really attractive when we were scouting him, and we actually looked at him last year as well, and he's great. He's a great soccer player in that he can combine in tight spaces. His technique is really, really tidy. And the first he touches the ball in the game against Seattle, he puts Serge Solans in on a breakaway, and it was a pass that is so high level, and you have to know where you're going before you get it, and these kind of things. And so his ability to combine, his technique is really good, but he's also a stretch guy, and then he also found himself on a one-on-one breakaway. So whenever you have a player that has the physical attributes of an elite performer, really comfortable in tight spaces to combine, but also can run in behind and has pace to go 1v1 with the goalkeeper, I feel like he makes our whole front line complete, right? You got Gozo, that's a real stretch 1v1 guy. You got Victor, who's a stretch goal scorer, holds the highest line. You got Diego, that is a playmaker. And then you have Morgan, who has a little bit of all those attributes and can really read the moment as to when to stretch and when to combine. And so I'm really, really excited about our front five and more importantly, how Morgan makes those players around him that much better.
I want to ask you about Sanabria, who we saw in the 11, and we'll get to some of the younger kids. But the ball he played to Hezarkhani for the goal, I mean, awesome strike. Like that young kid's got something, man. I'll tell you what, the Hezarkhani, I had never really heard much about him. You got something there. But I'm going to ask you the same question about Sanabria. What are you learning about him now that you've had him for a few weeks?
Yeah, again, just a really sophisticated player. I think like some of the ABCs of soccer, like the best players in the world have those things on lockdown, like the weight of his passes, his decision making, right? So like oftentimes in that position when a wing back crosses the ball, he's just crossing it into an area where you can see when he makes that play to Hezarkhani on the back post, it was Gozo making the first run and he hung it up behind Gozo for Aiden. Those are moments, and we talk about how are we going to score goals. And I keep saying it's like you have to make plays. And so the first action is actually picking somebody out. That's the first part of making a play. And the second part is Aiden's finish, right? And that's how you score goals. And so we can get the guys in these positions. At the end of the day, it's the soccer intelligence, it's the vision, right? And then it's the execution in really tight spaces that lend themselves to goal-scoring opportunities. And so that's what Sanabria brings. He's also another player that has a huge physical capacity. He can run his high-speed running is top on the team. His explosiveness, his ability to cover ground, and then defensively, he just takes on really, really good positions where he's occupying more than just one player. He's asking questions, putting himself in great positions to either press inside or press outside. And so I just think you have another all-around experienced player that's played the game at the highest level who now can impart, his know-how and his experience on the rest of the group.
Let's move over to the Solons kid, the Sergi Solons kid, who's come off the bench a couple of times. And as we just continue to get to know the new players, I'll just continue to ask you about him. What have you learned about him?
So, again, we had him in Portugal and had a couple goals in Portugal. And one of the things that stood out right from the start was his movement, right? So oftentimes we spend a lot of times with young players coaching them when to peel off the center back, when to run in behind the center back. And he's just got a really, really good understanding of whether his teammate has pressure on him and he needs support, the angle of support, the timing of that support, his ability to run in behind. So he's always threatening the highest line as well. And so his movement around defenses is elite for both our team to find them, but also our team to help create chances. And today he got in the many great spots, and he also scored a wonder goal. So he's just a really, and he's good in front of goal, right? So he's a finisher. Last year, I think in college, he had 16 goals in college in a 3-month season. So what we've identified as a staff is that he's just a really, really good young player that has all the necessary tools to be a top striker in this league.
One more question about a new guy, because we saw Lucas Engel in the 11 as well. So just kind of give us an update on his progress. What are you learning about him?
Yeah, just again, he's been the biggest surprise for me. Obviously, I saw him in video when he was at Cincinnati. Was bought by Middlesbrough in the championship in England, but was on loan last year. And it's really interesting because when you see him playing Cincinnati, I didn't know that he was going to bring this much or what he's bringing to our group. His communication is top. His level of poise in high pressure situations is top. His technique is really, really good. And then he's got that long diagonal that he put on display a couple times this last weekend, where he hits it from literally the left side of the field onto Gozo's chest. And that is a real weapon, especially when you have a guy like Gozo that can get in behind defenses. And then defensively, he's just solid. He just keeps the game in front of him and does a good job moving his feet and winning his duels. So he's just an all-arounder. And I think the biggest thing for me is his presence and his demeanor, where it's just really, really calm. He doesn't get rattled. And I think that helps guys like Jay and also Sanabria on that left side and the pivots, because he's really good at playing entry balls into the middle of the field as well. So just another all-arounder. And those three guys, more between Morgan, Juanma, Sanabria, and Engel, you got experienced players that's played the game at a really high level that bring great quality and just great leadership. Just their presence is just an inspiring thing for the group.
All right, now let's move over to just some other players on the roster. I referenced Aiden Hezarkani, and like I said, when I was getting ready to watch the Vancouver game, the Apple TV broadcast throws up the slide. I'm like, they're playing the Monarchs? What is going on here? And look, I'm no expert on this game, as I say all the time, but I can remember when you started giving Gozo chances, and it was like, all right, hold on, there's something there. And I don't know what is there for Aiden, but it feels like there is something there with his kid. Tell us about him.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing with Aiden, one, he's an amazing 1v1 player. He's really smooth, and he's great in front of goal. Like, oftentimes, if you're a 1v1 player, you're probably not the best finisher, but he picks out corners. He scores goals all the time in training. He's another player that is really comfortable with his back to goal. So, again, 1v1 players typically want the ball facing the defender, where Aiden is really, really comfortable with someone on his back, and then he can shake him loose. Like, he drops shoulders, he steps over the ball. Like, he's got a lot of really good moves facing his own goal, which is really unique. And I think with every game, he's really the biggest difference, Spence, for these younger guys is the pace of the game, right? So if you boss it at the Monarchs, it's one thing, but now you have probably 2 or 3 less seconds on the ball when you receive it in MLS. And so what we're talking about is not so much the quality is like exponential, which it still is great, but it's really the lack of time. And so what he's now working through and what Gozo had to work through is, I have less time, so I have to make more decisions before. I have to have a clearer picture as to what's around me before I receive the ball. And those are things that we're working with him to be able to receive the ball in areas that are going to be more dangerous. But again, today he was really bright again. And, oftentimes these young guys just need an opportunity and have good support around them. And I think that Aiden has that with our group.
We had Gozo on the show yesterday, and I was blown away at his maturity because I interviewed him maybe a couple of years ago, and I could only get like 6 or 7 minutes out of him. And I'm not knocking on him, but when you're that age, it's just hard to do this stuff if you've never done it before. He gave me 20 minutes of real, very honest communication. He was a delight to have on the show. So both as a player and as a person, past couple of years, how have you seen this kid kind of evolve?
It's incredible. Talk about learning to swim, just getting thrown in the deep end and now not only swimming, but like able to compete in the Olympics. Like that's the trajectory this kid's on. And I would say the biggest thing about Gozo is, I think you pointed it out, he's such a wonderful person, right? And he's also a student of the game. And oftentimes, when you reach a certain level of, success, especially for young kids these days, it doesn't take a whole lot to all of a sudden change your personality or change your demeanor. Gozo is so humble, is so hardworking. He's such a student. And because now we've changed his position. So yes, last year he was a winger, now he's a wing back. So now he's learning all these defensive responsibilities and transition responsibilities that he has. And he's just taking it with a grain of salt, and so, the amount of chances this guy, Gozo creates, because he's worked diligently in the off season to prepare for this year has been incredible. He had a good chance, a good shot. He had 2 good opportunities in the last game in Seattle. And a lot of them were just created by dropping a shoulder, stepping over the ball, the 1v1 moves that he, and the other one was a nice ball from Aiden where he played it across and Gozo hit it the first time. So I just think that Gozo is now like in a really awesome learning phase, but whilst he's learning, he's also producing, and that's really rare for young players. So the sky's the limit. If we can keep Gozo here for the next 10 years, that would be a dream, because I think he's going to be one of the best wide players that this league's ever seen.
All right, moving over now to Seattle. Let's start with they're a really good team every year.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a matchup thing? I mean, over the course of your career, whether it's a player or as a coach, they haven't won here. Gozo was probably 4 when the last time they won. They haven't won here since like 2011. What do you attribute that to? It's a pretty wild streak.
It is. It's strange. And I think after it gets to year 7 or 8, it starts to become more psychological than anything else, right? Especially, with our group, our front line, Ari's 21, has, a handful of games under his belt. Zach started his second game in Major League Soccer. Aiden, started his second game in Major League Soccer. And then you go on the other side of the field and you see like the Roldan brothers, Albert Rusnak, Jesus Ferreira. These guys have been in the league for years and years and years. They've all represented their respective national teams. So experience, all over this field. And so I think it just becomes, a little bit more psychological for Seattle. And for us, and again, a game of soccer is you got to make plays, right? And so they had a couple chances, and Rafa came up huge. But we were able to bury the chances that we created. And I think at the end of the game is when you score that first goal, that history of not winning here in all those years becomes even bigger, and it just becomes so oppressive that it's just hard to kick. So I think the most important thing is that we scored the first goal. And I think that kind of validates how difficult it is to actually win here in Sandy.
Yeah, now in a vacuum, and you kind of dissected a couple of things, but just with that performance on Saturday, because again, I'm sitting there ready to watch, and they roll out their 11, and I don't know enough about their entire team to say that's a first choice. But look, if I'm watching a different MLS team and recognize 4 or 5 players, it's a miracle. So I felt like that was as close to a first choice for me without knowing about them. And then, again, you're not even close to a first choice, all due respect to the group. But, I mean, what does that say that this young team still waiting for visas to get cleared and players to get healthy against a team that a lot of people believe will be one of the top teams in the West, went out there and got it done.
Yeah, no, I think, again, it speaks volumes of our ability to compete, because I think at the end of the day, what young players will give you in spades is real honest work, right? And they might make some errors. It might not be the most polished, but they're going to compete the right way, and they're not going to stop running. And so that is really, really important for the rest of our group, and I think when everyone buys into the fact that, and I said this earlier, I don't know when I said it, but when I was an older player and we had younger players on our team, it was almost like I had a built-in excuse if we didn't win, right? Like that's the way my brain was when I was in a bad way. It was like, well, what do you expect? We have a bunch of young guys, but the Jay Glad, the Engels and Hoffas, these guys that are experienced are helping these guys going, hey guys, you guys are going to make mistakes. Let's just have good reactions. And they're speaking, our mantra in the field. Their actions are living the mantra on the field. And so now you have these young guys that actually believe that they're safe in the environment in which they're playing in with our group. And so when you're a young player and you don't fear making mistakes, this is where magic happens. And you have guys that get your back. And again, if, both, those young guys, Luka Moisa was involved in the build up to that first goal, and then Gozo was involved in the build up to Ari's goal. And so these guys are not only working their tails off, but they're making plays as well. And I think that's just a really powerful thing, because now when the rest of the guys come into the camp, we've established the standard, right, is that everyone works extremely hard for one another. And then when you get a little bit more quality and experience in that front line, the thought is we're gonna be a top team in the West.
Yeah, I mean, you can see, I'm very excited to see what you're able to do as the manager when you have all these pieces at your disposal. But you can see these things kind of crystallizing in a way that I think RSL fans have a lot to look forward to throughout the course of the year. How, before we get to Atlanta, and we'll end there, how's the process going of integrating all of these pieces? Because as we talk about almost every year in this sport, in this league, sometimes there are communication gaps with language issues, and you've got 17-year-olds and you've got guys that are old. So when it comes to just the gelling of the group, the chemistry, what is that looking like now?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And that's why, preseason is really, really important, Spence, because we can really talk through the non-negotiables and non-negotiables, in the clubhouse, in and around, when we're not on the field. What does it look like to be an RSL player? Cleaning up after yourself on the airplane. When we get off buses, it's got to be clean. The boot room's got to be clean. The video room's got to be clean. So just these little things. And I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but how you do anything is how you do everything. Right. And so that's kind of the basis of our culture, is that we want to be hardworking. We want to be honest. We want to be transparent. We want to have great communication. That I think helps everyone understand where the boundaries are. And then when you have clear boundaries as the way we're going to operate off the field, then it's what are the non-negotiables on the field? And we're going to work our tails off. We got each other's backs. We never quit. We don't make excuses, and all those little things. And so I think as you're integrating players, sometimes the details are what's left to fix. But as long as the big ideas when you're on the field and the big ideas when you represent the club are intact, we can slowly bring the other guys along with the specifics and the details and the little tweaks. And those things are standard, because guys are coming from different leagues. Guys, like you said, guys are coming up from the Monarchs, and they're going to need. But as long as you have those non-negotiables on and off the field, all the other stuff comes easy, because you're a willing participant, you're a student of the game, and you understand that if you're on this team or at this club, is that you're a learner, whether you're a player, an admin, a trainer, a coach. We are all learning here. And so I think we create a psychologically safe environment so that we can translate the information in a way that everyone can digest, regardless of what age you are or where you're coming from, so that we can become greater than the sum of our parts.
All right, give me a thought on Atlanta. They've played a couple of games and no wins for them yet. That's a kind of a tricky venue, is it not? Kind of a tricky place to play. So give me a thought on them before I set you loose.
Yeah, so again, I think a really experienced team. They have some big time playmakers in their front line. The first two games, what I'll say is away from home, and anytime you play away in this league, it's extremely difficult, right? And so they're opening up their stadium this year, so we get the honor of going over there. But I think it's a team that is going to come out really, really hard in the first 15, 20 minutes, and really set a tempo at home in front of their fan base. And I think they're expecting probably 55, 60,000 people at this arena, which is going to be spectacular for a lot of our young guys. They'll have never played in an environment like this. And so I think for us, it's really important that we have some really good emotional control in the early stages and make sure that we're a bit more pragmatic with the way we're playing, knowing that they're going to really throw the kitchen sink at us to try to get their fans involved. And so it'll be a new experience for us, but one that I think that we can really lean on our previous two games to really find some good resolve and continue to improve our game with the ball. I think at times in the Seattle game, we were hesitant. We didn't want to make a mistake. And what we've been talking about all week long is we got to be brave. We got to make sure that we're able to control the game with the ball. And I think going up against a team like Atlanta, they have a lot of firepower, but I think if we find moments in the game where we can dictate it with the ball, their front three will be very much despondent in the fact that they're going to have to defend. And so I think we have to have a really balanced way of approaching this game. But like I said, I think we have two really good performances to really lean on to find our way through.
All right, bud, I'll set you loose so you can get some physiological size in and take your vitamin D3 for the day, okay? Thanks for the time, man. Be good.
Top man, Spence. All right, brother. Thank you.
All right, there he is, Pablo Mastroeni, RSL head coach, fan of Andrew Huberman's podcast, just like my producer. Are you still smashing your morning sunlight to make sure the circadian rhythm starts in motion?
I do try to get outside in the mornings.
That a guy.
You can call it whatever you wish.
Uh-huh. Are we cold plunging?
No.
Sauna?
Every once in a while, I will get in cold water just to get the nervous system going. But sauna is like a almost daily thing, yeah.
All right, not a boy. Hey, whatever works for you. I'm here for whatever helps you sleep at night. That's my thing.
There you go.
All right, 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. We'll switch gears. Not a good night last night if you play college basketball for a team in the state of Utah. One of my favorites, nicest guy in the world, former Aggie and pro hooper Spencer Nelson will join us coming up next on ESPN 700. All right, last night was not a good night if you play college basketball for a team in the state of Utah. Pumped when I saw the rundown today because our next guest, good friend, and it's been too long, Justin Bieber fan, if I remember correctly, former Aggie, pro hooper, and good enough to join us on a Wednesday afternoon. It is Spencer Nelson. What's up, man? How are you?
Oh, Spence Checketts. So excited to hear your voice, be on with you, and man, you show me so much love by I absolutely am a believer.
That's right. I do remember that. Now, before we get into it, I'm sorry to do this, but I've just got to ask you a quick question. What's the difference between a well-dressed man on a unicycle and a poorly dressed man on a bicycle?
Wow. I haven't heard this one. I'm excited to hear, though.
Attire. Now, I always have to remind people that nobody likes a good, or in that case, horrific dad joke more than Spencer Nelson. It kept us entertained on several late nights on the Jazz broadcast. Yes.
Well, you just have such a good taste in humor, and I've appreciated that about you. And I hope that I've added to that with my dad joke.
You have for sure. What's the latest, man? How are you? How's Julie? How's the family? How's everybody doing?
Oh, man, that's so nice of you to ask. Everyone's good. Everyone's doing really, really good. We've got a broken foot in our family, my 15-year-old boy, unfortunately, basketball-wise, but everyone's good. Life's good. Are you guys doing good?
Yeah, we're good. We're good. It's been a rough basketball season for our guy, Alex Jensen. So I don't know how much Utah hoops you've been able to watch because I do want to talk about the Aggies. But you know, Al, and this is a situation where we all knew it was going to take some time. I don't know that any of us thought it was going to be this rough. I mean, they run off the floor last night against Colorado at home. Senior night, I guess they're calling it still, even though, we'll get there in a minute. But tell me what you've seen, and then just with your experience in college basketball, playing and coaching, and then the professional ranks as well. What do you know about Al, and how long do you think it's going to take to get this thing turned around?
Al, two things that I've really enjoyed watching him this year is, and he's true to form. I think Al has a really, really good basketball mind. He obviously learned from Coach Majerus and then a number of places in the NBA, and he does. He has a great basketball mind. Second thing is his temperament. On the sidelines and all of those things, I've been so impressed at his temperament as I've watched. Now, I haven't watched every game, but I've watched quite a few games, and he keeps his cool in all of it. However, it's such a challenging environment up at the U right now of trying to rebuild that excitement from, you and I remember the excitement, and you can go Bogut, and then you go a few years after Bogut, Kuzma, kind of excitement, and then it just started to dissipate. And it's not something you rebuild overnight, and it's going to take a while. And in this day and age, unfortunately, a while means money, right? Money, and then you've got to win, and then it takes time for the winning to be consistent enough to where people start coming back. So it is definitely a rebuild. It's a project. I think, like I said, I compliment Alex on those two things, but it's just going to take a lot of work and a little bit of luck, to be honest with you.
And your point about just the economic support needs to be underscored. And, Witt talked about it every chance he had. And now, of course, he lives in Ann Arbor where the resources are never ending. But that's just kind of the reality of the thing, isn't it, Spencer? Like, if you don't have NIL, if you're not a full share if you're not a full rev share member with both football and basketball, you don't have a shot, right? Like, you just have to have it.
Yeah. You got to be really, really lucky if you don't have that. You have to have it. And then even if you do have it, the school down south in Provo at basketball shows you that it doesn't guarantee anything still, right? It puts you in the conversation and it gives you a chance, but then injuries and a number of other things can affect it. But yeah, it's the baseline starting point. You've got to have something to build on there.
So let's move over to BYU. We'll get to Utah State because last night for all three teams, not great. And look, I'll just speak for myself. I picked Houston to win the league, but I thought BYU would be a top three team in the league and maybe make a run in the tournament. I always hesitate to say, like, yeah, that's a Final Four team because March Madness is chaos. It is a single elimination tournament, and every year excellent teams lose early on. Now, of course, Richie Saunders, Dawson Baker, they start 16-1. They lose those two. That makes a difference. They're a much different team, Spencer, than they were a year ago. They're so isolation heavy. Only 8 assists last night, 24 for Cincinnati, but they're 4-9 in their last 13. I don't think they're in danger of missing the tournament, but my mind is blown that we're even having this conversation. How have you kind of digested their season so far?
Yeah, I mean, two very, very different teams. Injuries, I mean, that's got to be really hard on the coaching staff because I do think injuries. Richie Saunders is a monumental loss, right? Like he's borderline NBA guy. So maybe guys who know better than me would say he's guaranteed in the NBA, but he's a borderline NBA guy. He's a pro for sure. A great basketball player. I mean, he single-handedly beat Utah, right, at Utah in that game. He is a difference maker, and you lose him, that's a huge effect. But like you said, Dawson Baker and some other situations in terms of injuries have impacted where their depth, they're just lacking depth, especially on the guard line. And that changes the dynamic. Now, they started really strong. Unfortunately, their Achilles heel was defense, the inability to get stops when they really needed it. And that really, really affected them when they still had Richie, right? There were a couple games that it was like, man, that you've got to be better defensively. And they were just fortunate to kind of eke out a win a la at Utah as an example. But now it's okay. What do we do now? I mean, they're going to try to piece it together. I think Debanza gets him in the tournament. Honestly, that may be kind of a weird take, but I think the NCAA committee says we got to have him in the NCAA tournament. I don't know if they're an 8 seed, a 9 seed, a 10 seed. I'm not exactly sure, but yeah, with the team they have now, the expectation of a Final Four, it's just unrealistic. And I mean, unless, Randolph Childress comes out in Debanza and ACC tournament Randolph Childress and he goes for 50 a game, for 3 or 4 games in a row and does something like that, which I guess the number 1 draft pick, you don't want to put anything past them. And they beat Iowa State at home with the current roster, but it's just hard to envision after seeing the UCF game, the Cincinnati game, and just kind of getting a feel for what they have on the court. It's hard. So that's a tough one where, like you said, you've got to have NIL money, but there's got to be more than that. And you got to be a little lucky because injuries can ravage a season. Just with 1 or 2 dudes, it completely changes the potential.
Tell me what you see when you watch AJ. Of course, we're still in this space where the Jazz have, the team that you and I covered, there's no semblance of any of it. I was down at the arena the other night. Like, everyone's gone. The whole place feels different. It's a brand new group of players. It's been 4 years, though. And this should be the final year where they're, how shall we say, going to keep their draft asset regardless of what the on-court product looks like. And if they get a top 2 pick, 1 or 2, AJ might be there for the taking. When you watch him play, what stands out? What type of pro do you think he's going to be?
His size, his athleticism, and then his shot-making ability. He's high level, right? I mean, he's just unbelievable. I don't know if you want to say once in a generation talent, but probably that's excessive. But he's clearly a man among boys when he's out there, and it takes 2 guys or 3 guys or 4 guys sometimes. But great shot-making ability, really good handle, but it's his size and this athleticism combined with those things that you're like, man, he's a top 3 pick. I'd be surprised if he's not the top pick. I remember talking to a couple GMs last year, and they said if he would have been in the draft, they would have taken him over Cooper Flagg. Now, granted, it's easy to say that if you don't have the top pick and it's not the situation you have to, but they were guys that I trust that are GMs in the NBA that said it, and I think they meant it. So it tells you how highly they think of him. And yeah, he is just that good in terms of what his ceiling is in the NBA. I mean, he's an all-star, right? I mean, he at some point in time, I'm not saying it's going to be next year, but within the next 5 to 7 years, I think he has the potential to be a top 15 player in the NBA, just with the physical gifts that he has, and then the skill matched with it, and the feel for the game. That's the one underscored trait. It feels like when he has the ball in his hands, he sees the floor. He's not extremely selfish at all, and it feels like his feel is really, really good.
I think he's awesome. I mean, I think it's kind of as close to a can't miss as you're going to get. Interesting anecdote there about taking him over Cooper Flagg, because Cooper Flagg has been incredible for the Mavs. Let me follow up with this, though. I don't know how much Darren Peterson you've been able to see, because it's been tough as it pertains to his health or whatever's going on with Kansas. I think most scouts, and the Cam Boozer kid, obviously Carlos's kid, is really good, but it feels like most people believe this does come down to AJ or Darren. Do you have a take there on which way the Jazz should go?
Yeah, I do. When I first heard about Darren and saw like his size and everything, I was like, man, I think you got to go with AJ. But then I watched him. This is, I mean, I don't know how important this is, and I don't know how it carries over to the NBA. The fact that AJ plays all the time and doesn't take himself out and that kind of stuff, and I don't know the underlines, right? So I'm not throwing stuff at him, throwing stones at him. I don't understand, but there's the temperament and that kind of stuff that would concern me if I was an NBA GM, that pulling himself out of games and in and out and that kind of stuff. But then I'm going with AJ's size and athleticism, right? It's one thing if AJ was, bigger, stronger and that kind of stuff, but he wasn't as athletic as he is. I would say, okay, maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I'd go with Peterson. But AJ's just that much bigger than Darren, and I like that at the NBA level.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're both going to be really special. I don't think Darren is healthy, because I watched him quite a bit in high school. It's kind of interesting with this freshman class that we have across the landscape of college basketball. Like, there's a potential that every player of the year in P5 basketball will be a freshman. And if you look at any mock draft, like 15 of the top 18 prospects are freshmen. And because of that, a lot of people were kind of watching some of them last year. And, Darren played against the Boozer brothers. He played against a bunch of really, really good high school teams, and a lot of the games were televised. And he was impossible. Like, nobody could do anything with him. I actually don't think he's healthy. I don't know that he's sandbagging. He doesn't look as explosive to me this year as he did last year. That's just my opinion.
Interesting. And that could totally be the case. But I am with you. Like, the Boozer kid's really good. The kid at Tennessee is really good. Like, there's other really good players, but it's like, it's AJ and Darren are at 10, and those other dudes are like 7 or 6. Like, there is clear separation between the level those two kids are at compared to everyone else. And they're good. Like, Boozer's probably going to be a very good NBA player, but there's something special about those two dudes. For
sure. All right, death taxes, Utah State basketball. I mean, my goodness, they once again are probably the best team in the state. Certainly on paper, we could make a different debate, but they've been, and look, 3 of 4, right? So I don't know what it is with Vegas, with UNLV. They lost to them in Logan, and then they got run last night. Still in a position to win the league if they can get New Mexico up in Logan coming up on Saturday. I'm just going to ask you for a macro take, intertwined in what's going on with this season. What is up? How do these basketball teams just every single year, for the most part in Logan, you can just pencil them in to win like 23, 24 games and compete for the conference? What's the secret sauce up there?
Do you remember Sasha Vujacic? Did you ever see
those?
I Am Machine.
Of course,
I Am
yeah.
Machine.
Yeah.
That's what I think of with Utah State basketball. I Am Machine. I Am Machine.
Love it.
It really. I mean, you go back to Craig. Did a great job. You go to Ryan Odom, did a good job. Danny Sprinkle did a good job. And now Jared Calhoun did a very good job. Obviously, those are all really good coaches, but there does have to be something. You don't get 4 dudes in a row in like 7 years. I don't know how many years it is that just keeps winning at the level that they are. So it sounds corny to people, but I think Logan is a special place, and especially when you get these kids. Like I talked to him in the post-game interviews, whether it's MJ Collins or Colby or Perryman or whoever it is from these different parts of the country, but they come to Logan. They see the facilities. I think they're surprised by the facilities. They like the concept of there's not a ton of drama. There's not a lot of ways to get in trouble, which is a very real thing for some situations. And if parents are like, man, I like the fact he's not going to go get in trouble in Logan, Utah. I can focus on basketball. And then the spectrum is magical. And I know we say it over and over and over, but if you were there for the Grand Canyon game the other night, man, it is magical. And that environment, I think people want to play in that environment. And so that's a big selling point. And then everyone at the end of the day, what money matters for sure. But I know some of these kids turned down higher offers because they thought situation was going to be better. Now, they're not going to pass up on, millions and millions and give that. But if the difference is, tens of thousands or maybe even some small, low 6-figure differences, I think Utah State can be competitive, and they've shown that they can be. And so I think the package of it all is extremely attractive, but you've got to give these coaches a lot of credit. And I give Jared a ton of credit. He is a very, very good basketball coach. And then he got the right pieces, and those freshmen probably turned out a little bit better than what people thought. And then Mason and MJ and Drake and those guys are doing their thing. And so at some point, can you keep doing it? Well, you've got to have money to do it. But from what I'm hearing is enough people are stepping up. The university's stepping up. I mean, we're definitely not BYU. We're definitely not Utah. I mean, I don't know what Utah has. I have an idea of what BYU has, but they have enough that they can get the right guys. And it hasn't that been Utah State basketball all along, whether it was with money or not. It was always the guys that maybe were overlooked just a little bit, and Utah State ended up getting them, and they ended up turning out to be pretty darn good basketball players.
Is Jared going to stay? I mean, is he going to stay? Look, we all do what we do for a living with the potential of being promoted and being paid more, and generational wealth is going to attract look, most anybody, I think, is what I'd say, depending on what the offer is. But at some point, y'all deserve a coach to stick around for a while. Do you get the feeling Jared wants to?
I think Jared really likes the community. I think the community's done a great job of welcoming his family. He's got a beautiful wife and kids and daughters, and just a beautiful family. And I think the community's done a pretty good job. But like you said, he makes a lot of money at Utah State. I mean, he makes a lot more than Stu Morrill did back in the day, right? But things are different, and it's hard to compare those things. So he makes a lot of money. I think it's going to have to take a really good, big job to steal him away. Which, could that happen? Yeah. A few of those open up every single year. For Danny Sprinkle, it was Washington, and I don't know what he makes, $3 million or something like that. And Jared's making quite a bit more than Danny Sprinkle made, right? I think he's making $750,000 or $800,000 more than Danny made. So the university, I think, has stepped up as much as they possibly can to keep him there. But if someone comes with $5 or $6 or $7 million, a Big Ten team or an SEC team or whatever it is, obviously the guy's probably leaving. But I think Utah State has done all that they can possibly do to make it attractive. I think the community's, based on what Jared has said, the community's done a good job. And so we'd love to have him for the next 10 years and be able to do that. But you can't control those types of things. So Utah State put its best foot forward, and he's got a long-term contract. And each year, I don't know the exact dynamics, so someone's going to fact-check me and say it's not exactly true. But, the buyout from Washington helped pay Jared's, salary for the first year, maybe year and a half or something like that, and each other school. So it's nice that these other schools at least have been contributing to pay our coaches. We do appreciate that.
What do you think, before I say you lose, Ken Palm, friend of the show, kenpalm.com. And look, this isn't completely tried and true. San Diego State just went on a run. historically speaking, Mountain West Conference teams have a rough time in the NCAA tournament. If we assume full health and they're at, we'll just say Utah State is playing at their max, what's the ceiling, both Mountain West Conference tournament, NCAA tournament this year?
For Utah State, I'll say Mountain West. I think Mountain West gets 2 teams in, and then I think Utah State, this Utah State team, could steal one in the tournament. I do. I think it's going to be really hard to get past the round of 32. But matchup. Who does Utah State have problems with? UNLV, Grand Canyon, San Diego State. They have a hard time with length and athleticism, and that's UNLV to a T, and then Grand Canyon. San Diego State doesn't have as much length. They still have some, but not as much. And so matchup, if they end up as a 7 seed or an 8 seed, and they're playing an SEC team in the first round, man, we're in trouble. But if we're playing a Big East team or a Big Ten team, it really does depend on which Big 12, Big Ten team we're playing. So it's, you know, I'm being a little cliche when I say it, but the matchup truly matters. And this team, I mean, last night you didn't see it at all, but man, they can put 15 points on you in 2 minutes, right? When that zone and they start turning people over and they get out in transition, making easy buckets and threes in transition, like they can do it. Last night you didn't see it at all, but there's been nights at Colorado State at home and some other games where you're like, man, they can put it on someone really, really quickly. And so they absolutely have the potential to win a game in the NCAA tournament. The hard part, Mountain West tournament, honestly, right now is what it's looking like is they're going to play the Running Rebels in their first game.
Oh.
And that could be that. It's hard to beat a team 3 times. You and I know that, but at the same time, UNLV on their home court, having beat us twice with, I mean, the most maybe electric or dangerous player in the league with Lawhorn. Lawhorn Gibbs. Mountain West tournament, I hope it goes well, but I'm cautious on that one.
All right, buddy. Well, I appreciate the time. And before I say you lose, you should know that I learned something recently, and I'm going to share with you. There's a term that you can use to refer to the belly of a woman who's pregnant with twins. You know what that is?
No, what is it?
It is a 2-bed womb apartment.
You want to know what that's the best? Did you watch the Olympics much at all?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, loved it.
You see all these flags, and what do you think of the Swiss flag?
I didn't really have an opinion. Tell me what you thought.
You know, I don't really know. I just say the flag is a big plus.
All right.
You know, big plus.
All right, there you go. Purveyor of dad jokes, Justin Bieber fan, and just a great guy. Spencer, thanks for the time, man. Hope you're well. We'll chat soon, okay?
Thanks, buddy. You're the best.
Spencer Nelson, former Aggie. Why were you shaking your head in there while we were going back and forth with dad jokes? Those were good dad jokes.
They're funny. They're great. I really did like your one on the inset.
Okay. Yeah, it's Spencer for hours would keep us entertained with dad jokes. There was a massive fight in a women's basketball game earlier. Did you see this? They were just showing it on ESPN.
I missed it.
Like, I'm talking about several women. It looked like a ref was like laid out. Didn't see it. Probably shouldn't talk about it. But we will catch a break. Coming up on the other side, it is time for your NBA Daily Assist. Tim McMahon joins us. We're going to bring in Richard Smith as well during the 4 o'clock hour. So keep it right here on ESPN 700. Got a big one at MSG tonight, about 90 minutes away from OKC, taking on the New York Knicks. Shea will play in that game. The Jazz are headed to Philly. The Jazz have lost 6 straight games, but, Our next guest covers the NBA for ESPN, our weekly visit with Tim McMahon on a Wednesday. What's up, man? How are you?
Howdy, partner. How you doing?
I'm good. Where do we find you? Are you on location tonight anywhere?
I am not on location tonight. I am in L.A. this week doing a little NBA Today, et cetera, et cetera. And be honest with you, the Pacers play the Clippers tonight. I am not going to make the trek to Inglewood for that one. I'm going to stay in the room and watch games that both teams are trying to win.
Yeah, I think that's probably the right call. Our buddy Tom Haberstroh today tweeted out that the bottom 10 teams in pro basketball have combined to lose 40 straight games, Tim. Have we landed on 10 teams are unserious about competing this year?
Well, I saw one of those teams last night, and I can tell you the Pelicans are trying. There's no point in them tanking because their pick is owed to Atlanta. They're trying with all their might. They are just not very good. And boy, oh boy, does that make trading your pick unprotected this year quite a massive mistake, especially considering Derek Queen is no longer in the Pelicans starting lineup.
So when it comes to all of the things that you've heard, Timmy Goodtime, Bontemps writing on this, Haberstroh writing on this, a lot of people coming to the table with potential solutions. And since you and I last spoke, Adam Silver informed teams that they will enact something next year to try to make this issue at least a little bit more digestible. Any insight on what that is going to look like?
They're definitely going to discuss pick protections, whether they're going to kind of take some negotiating power away from general managers to avoid situations like the Jazz are in now, like the Washington Wizards are in now, that we've seen teams, the Mavericks when they tanked to avoid the plan a couple of years ago when they had a top 10 protected pick. I think there's discussion about having like standard pick protections and not having that something that is going to be, negotiated down to the exact pick by GMs. We'll see if that goes over. And then there's a lot of ideas. There's the idea of at a certain point in the season, whether it's the All-Star break or, whatever it is, instead of the losses counting the lottery standings, the wins, I think they're going to look at tweaking the lottery odds again. Obviously, they flattened the lottery odds to try to address the tanking issue a few years back, and that's really blown up in their face because all it's done is resulted in more teams tanking. There's a lot of ideas. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I can say that there's going to be something that's going to be there will be significant changes coming this summer with the hopes of addressing this and solving this problem.
So, there's not a ton to talk about with the Jazz, but since you and I last spoke, they have elected to continue to lose intentionally, but just in a more classic style. Lauri Markkanen hurt during practice. He will be reevaluated in a couple of weeks. Jaren Jackson Jr., as well as Yusuf Nurkic, surgeries. Jaren Jackson Jr. to his knee, Nurkic to his nose. They're out for the year as well. Keontae's playing, and he's playing pretty well. But what do you make of the Jazz just maybe learning a lesson? Like, okay, we're still going to do this, but we're doing it the way that everybody else does it now, so please don't fine us again.
Hey, the Jazz damn near beat the Nuggets the other night because Keontae George is really, really, really good. And the Nuggets have some issues right now. But listen, man, I really, really – and for Jazz fans, the good news is this is the last year that we're going to be discussing tanking as a strategy for the Jazz for a little while. And they made sure of that because they traded their pick next year. It's not fun. It's not entertaining. They haven't had the kind of luck in the lottery that would have expedited the process. And, no matter where they end up in the lottery this year, whether that is number 1 or where are they now, 6? So I guess they could, shoot, if they're number 9. But what is this? I think it's like 0.6% chance that they land 9 and not have their pick. Regardless, this is going to be their last significant piece of a rebuild. And next year they're going into the year like, guns a-blazing. trying to be a playoff team. I don't know if they'll be a playoff team, but you will have competitive basketball in Utah, and winning as many games as possible will finally be the priority again for the Jazz. And Will Hardy is going to get to unleash his coaching powers for good instead of evil with a team that, look, man, they've got a chance to be an interesting team with Keontae's emergence and the addition of Jared Jackson Jr. We know Lowry's a really good player. You know, I could see Ace Bailey being a guy who takes a significant leap next year. He's still so raw. You know, I'm interested to see how much summer league action he gets, but I would assume it's going to be at least a little bit. See how the Walker Kessler thing plays out. They plan on him being in the mix. You know, the NBA is going to be fun again in Salt Lake City next year, one way or another.
Let me ask you about three players, just to see if you have any insight as to whether or not they will be around for a while, because I agree with you. I think they have a chance to be very entertaining and honestly pretty good next year. Now, the West, of course, is deep, but you referenced Keontae. He's around. Ace, they have him as part of their future plans. Let me ask you about Bryce Sensabaugh, Kyle Filipowski, and Isaiah Collier. I'm leaving Cody Williams off the list because I just don't think he's going to get it, but maybe I could be wrong. Those three players, though, Sensabaugh, Collier, and Filipowski, do you have any idea how the organization views them?
Remind me where those guys are on their rookie deals.
They're all under contract next year for sure. So and I mean it's a good thing to bring up because they could just be rotational pieces on cheap contracts.
Well, and you know, I'm trying to remember. I think Sensabaugh is extension eligible. I don't know that that's going to be a big priority. You know, I do think he's the one guy who there's a pretty clear picture of what he can be as a contributor on a good team. And Sensabaugh's got a chance to be a really nice bench scorer in the league. I told you, Will Hardy calls him the crock pot. Mm-hmm. It might not get as hot as quick as a microwave, but once he gets cooking, he can really get cooking. And, so I could definitely see him as a significant part of the franchise's future. You know, there's a lot to like about Isaiah Collier. I think just the jumper's got to come along for him to be getting minutes on a good team. But, you know, and also, listen, who are they going to end up drafting? That also is going to play a part in this. Filipowski, I'm not as it's harder for me to kind of see where he would fit on a competitive NBA team. He can't play center. It's just, you're going to be bad defensively with him at center. And then he's really not a power forward in the modern NBA. The guy could certainly prove me wrong. Maybe, he can carve out a niche and have a nice long NBA career. I would wager that he ends up being a guy who ends up making a whole lot of money in Europe.
I tend to agree with that. Filipowski under contract, a $3 million guarantee. Sensabaugh guaranteed at 4.8. He is extension eligible next year. Then Collier 2.7. Then they have a team option on him the year after that. But all three do have guarantees this next year.
Yeah, and listen, Collier is at least worth certainly keeping through his rookie, unless he's in a trade or whatever. But I mean, he is no question an NBA athlete. I mean, muscular, physical guard. Obviously, the guy's a really good passer. Broke John Stockton's rookie assist record, right? But, and had the 20-whatever assist game this year. Point guard's just a really hard position to play in the modern NBA if teams are inviting you to take jump shots.
What do you think they'd do with Nurkic? Or did he play well enough here because he's unrestricted? Do you think they try to bring him back?
I think they would. I know they would really like to have Nurkic back as a backup next year. Now, what the market's going to end up being for him, I couldn't tell you that. But he played well for the Jazz this year. He does some things that they really value. I mean, he's specifically, he's resuscitated that screen assist stat that the Jazz fans love so much. But yeah, they would be very happy to have Nurk as their backup center next year.
One more Jazz question because there's just nothing else, okay? And I'm just curious as to whether or not you have any intel on who they like at one, if they get one. It feels like most people debate the Peterson kid with A.J. DiBonso, who, of course, is playing here in Provo. Do you have any idea who the Jazz would prefer if they get that number one overall pick?
I'd just be guessing. I mean, it's interesting. Peterson is the guy who is considered by most of the draft experts at this point to be the number one pick. There's also some questions, and questions that, by the way, aren't really too dissimilar to some of the questions there were about Ace Bailey during the pre-draft process. And Ace kind of came in the league with a bit of a tarnished reputation, and I can tell you that they have really loved having him in Utah, and Will Hardy's enjoys coaching him, and but that was a situation where they felt like the bad advice that he was getting is no longer in his ear, right? He did away with his advisor. There's questions about a lot of stuff with Darren Peterson, but the talent is undeniable. And then interesting, like obviously there's clear ties to the franchise with both DeBanza and Boozer. But yeah, I don't know. I have not had those discussions with people with the Jazz, and I don't think it's in their best interest, to be honest with me, even if I did have those discussions.
Fair enough. Not a Jazz question, but a question about a guy that used to play for the Jazz, and I did not know that Rudy was complaining about not seeing the ball until I actually saw your clip earlier today when I was watching. And look, man, we went through this here so many times, and like anybody who actually thought Gobert should get the ball more, like it's just not who he is. And there's so many things about who he is that are awesome, but this is exactly what happened with the Donovan stuff and some of the other players that were here. And there were actually a faction of, I'll say, media members that would kind of politic for Rudy to get the ball on the block more. And I just felt like anybody that was paying attention knows that is not a good idea because he doesn't have it in his bag. But what happened here? How did this go down? And what's your response?
So you saw my clip.
I did.
I can tell you that Rudy saw my clip.
Oh, okay.
And Rudy reached out to me and said he totally missed the mark on this one, my friend. And I said, what did I miss? And he said my interpretation of his comments, which were made while he was laughing, which they were, but we've seen Rudy tell some truth and jest. Anyways, he said, you're just doing your job. I get it. But, he felt like he didn't like the comparison to Donovan, just to be real honest. He said there's better ways to showcase how we're playing and why we're actually winning. I agree with that. He says he has a great relationship and an honest relationship with Ant. They talk to each other. They push each other every day. I would also agree with that. He said the comparisons are inaccurate. I thought it was passive-aggressive complaining for the ball. Rudy obviously has pushed back on that. To me, it's really not. It's not even about the post touches. It's really not. Like, there's a difference if he's got like a guard, sealed in the restricted area. Then I do think you got to toss it down to him. My thing is, like, Rudy is one of the best. He's a Hall of Fame role player.
Yep.
Literally, he is a Hall of Fame role player. He's a 4-time defense player. He's one of the best, not just rim protectors, but defensive anchors in the history of the game. He does some things that help you offensively. The screening, the rolling hard, the putting the pressure on the rim. I just don't even like the idea that Rudy is passive-aggressively complaining about not touching the ball enough. Because it has been a subject with Ant. I mean, his coach yelled at him for not passing the ball. Then he hits a dagger on the next play and tells Chris Finch, Ant did, that's what I bleeping do. But listen, like I said, Rudy didn't like the light that I portrayed that in. I thought it was pretty clear lines to read between. He pushed back on that, and so we'll leave that where it is. And it was, the whole thing came up when he said somebody asked him about how, what Kyle Anderson can bring to the team. They've got him back in the buyout market. And he said someone to actually pass the ball. I don't know, man. I thought that was a pretty clear passing aggressive jab, but that's fine. But, the Wolves are rolling, and they've gone through, like they did last year, kind of a messy middle of the season. They're playing very well. This is a team that went to the conference finals. the last couple of years, and certainly are well within their rights to feel like they can make another deep playoff run. And if they do that, Rudy obviously is going to be a huge, huge part of it.
Well, and you just underscored it. The point that you made, and look, I know the problem with analyzing anybody's schedule, when you see that they've won 7 of 8, you have to look at how many teams they've played that are actually serious about competing. And I know they have kind of beaten up on a bunch of bottom dwellers, but they have wins in Denver against the Clippers in Los Angeles. And I'm not sure, and I'll cede to your expertise here. I don't know that anyone is in OKC's and San Antonio's cul-de-sac. I don't know that anyone else in the West is. Houston with their injuries. And look, I was at the Jazz-Denver game. Denver needs to get healthy. Like, Jokic is amazing. Yeah. I'll never be completely out on him at all. But if there is a third team in the West, Tim, it actually might be Minnesota, yeah?
I mean, it might be, and they did go to the conference finals the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Now, neither of those series were competitive, but they were one of the last two standing in the West in each of the last couple of years. You know, I believe, and the vast majority of people I talk to around the league believe that Denver is above them in the pecking order, but the Nuggets absolutely have to get healthy. They have to get Aaron Gordon back. He's such a key piece to everything they do. He's the glue that holds together their defense. They got to get Peyton Watson back. He's having a breakout season before he did his hammy. And honestly, they got to get Joker back to his form. His wrist has been an issue. He didn't want to talk about it, but it has been. And his efficiency, by his standards, has been alarmingly low over the last month or so. So there's a lot of ifs for the Nuggets, but I still think there are 3 real championship threats in the West, and the Nuggets are one of them.
Who's going to win the MVP? How's this going to play out?
So who's going to be the top seed in the West?
I'll say OKC.
I think that might. Well, if OKC is the top seed in the West, if OKC has the best record in the league, I think it's going to be really hard for Shea not to repeat his MVP. I think it's going to be hard to make a case for somebody else if those two things are true. And again, Joker, I think Joker, unless he does something else, will hit the games limit, but he hasn't been himself. And it's such a high standard, but he hadn't played to that standard since he's come back. They've dropped in the standings significantly. I think his case has been pretty severely dented. If the Spurs are the number 1 seed in the West, Wemby's going to have a heck of a case. And again, I think, unless something happens, he's going to hit the games limit. He's just so by far the most dominant defensive force in the league, and he's averaging like 24 and 12, whatever it is, 3-4 assists per game. He's going to have, I think the odds don't say this, but I think Wemby's the second best candidate right now. And then, Cade's got a case now. Didn't help with the 4-16 last night. Didn't help with the 5-26 against the Spurs recently. But who had the Pistons as the number 1 seed in the East?
Yeah.
And he, he's got as much of a burden in terms of offense creation on him as anybody in the league.
Yeah, and every time I watch Detroit, I'm more and more impressed, and they'll get full and healthy, and we'll see if they can actually do anything in the postseason. But before I set you loose, let's exist in these for a moment. I feel like, if we're honest, you could probably make a case for 4 teams right now, right? Pistons, Celtics, Knicks, Cavs. Would you add anyone to that list, and who of those 4 are you most confident in?
Those are the 4. I want to wait and see what Tatum looks like.
Yeah.
If Tatum is, and listen, it's not fair or reasonable to expect Tatum to return from an Achilles in 10 plus months and revert right to all NBA form. But if Tatum is like a really good player adding to that mix, then I think you can make a case for the Celtics. Now, the Pistons have been the best team in the league, or in the East rather, all season long. There's the inexperience, there's the lack of spacing and creation outside of Cade concerns. The Knicks are 15-4 in the last 19 and have the best defense in the league during that stretch.
Yep.
That's worth paying attention to.
Yep. For sure. All right, man. Well, enjoy the sunshine. You're not going to enjoy the basketball, but I appreciate your time. Have a good week and safe travels. Okay.
I appreciate you, brother. Adios, amigos.
All right. The great Tim McMahon in L.A. choosing not to go to the Clippers Who is it tonight? Pacers. You want to know why? Because the Pacers are also trying to lose. Here's the exercise that we get to do every night in this league right now. Thunder, Knicks, MSG, good game. Elite teams trying to win. Jazz, Sixers, no reason to turn it on. Hornets, Celtics, pretty good game. Charlotte's actually better than most people thought. Celtics definitely contender in the East. Blazers, Grizzlies, no reason to turn it on. Hawks, Bucks, Giannis is back. Two average teams. Pacers, Clippers, no reason to turn it on. There are 4 games tonight that it's not worth a second of your time. NBA basketball. It's fantastic. All right, we'll catch a break. 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Richard Smith live in studio coming up on the other side of a quick break right here on ESPN 700. One bracket, $1 million. It's the ESPN 700 and 92 on FM $1 million bracket challenge. Going live on Selection Sunday, March 15th, right around the corner. Sign up today on ESPN700sports.com. That is brought to you by Big Willie's, Game Day Men's Health, the Intermountain Bobcat, Budweiser, the Intermountain Sportsman's Expo, Burger Fusion, and the Utah RV Super Show. And the great Richard Smith brings you the bracket this year. Smitty live in studio. Hello, sir. How are you?
Spence, we're doing well. It's a beautiful spring day out there. I know you're getting ready for your golf game. You look just like one of those guys, Spence, who sees the sunshine, the snow melting, the temperature's getting a little nicer, and all of a sudden you go, oh, I got to go see a guy and get fitted for all brand new clubs because that's the way I roll. You look just like one of those guys.
I'm exactly one of those guys. Shout out to my guy Jordan Bloxham up at T-Box in Centerville. I went through the whole process, and I've never done this before. Yeah. So I am getting clubs. I was fitted. So Champions Tour is the next step.
Well, you see what happens, Spence, when you do that, now you wipe out most of the built-in excuses you have.
Oh, I'll find
for
more.
Your game.
I'll find more.
So now people are going, look, you went and got fitted. You got the pros look at you. You had the different cameras on. You had 5 different angles on your swing. They gave you the new clubs. You got the thing, the grips. You're ready to go, and you get out there and you still hack the first one off into the woods, and then you're like, nah, something happened wrong. It's not me. It's these clubs, you know. And that's what I see, Spence. That's why I don't do the club fitting thing. That way I have still a whole bag of excuses in my pocket. I can use at any time that people go, oh yeah, okay, well that's the way it is. You know.
I have a partial rotator cuff tear.
See,
told you.
There we go.
I'll figure I'll figure something out. But no, the first 60-degree sunny day in March always hits a little different. I love this time of year. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, and you know, you can hear the sirens also calling a little down south towards St. George because you know it's really nice down there right now.
Yeah.
And you know, you find any excuse to get down there for a few days and hit them, and it really brings the season right to the front.
For sure. And one of the other reasons I've always loved March, birthday month for me, St. Patty's Day. There's that.
There we go.
And then the basketball this month starts to get really, really fun. Here's where I wanted to start with you today. So, as the Jazz continue to elegantly pursue the draft asset in their back pocket, we'll say that today.
That's a nice phrase.
We need to start to get to know maybe some of these young prospects a little bit better. When it comes to tournament basketball, Smitty, whether it's conference tournaments or NCAA tournaments, how can this time of year really help college prospects to put themselves on the radar of NBA scouts?
Well, most of the guys that are near the top of your draft boards right now, Spence, you've been following, you know, the last couple of years, really, and even if it's the freshman guys like the Debanza kid at BYU or Cam Boozer or, you know, Darren Peters, any of those guys, you've been following them since high school, and you know their AAU history and their high school history, and now their freshman year. You know most of the stuff. So their situation isn't going to change a whole lot, plus or minus, because you kind of have a feel for what you think of them wherever they are on your particular scale or on your board. It's more guys who are kind of laying in the weeds, who maybe are having good seasons, and maybe they they just haven't jumped out as much. And they come on the NCAA tournament or the conference tournament run, and they have a big couple of weeks, and maybe it draws your attention to look a little bit deeper into who they are, what their deal is. It could do something like that for guys. We always used to make sure that we didn't overreact to any of that kind of stuff, because by now, you know, teams have 25, 27 games under their belt. They're going to, you know, the good teams are going to play another 3 weeks. They're going to have another 4, 5, 6 games or something. So unless something really unusual happens, it's most of those guys, you kind of have a pretty good feel for what you think of them. It's going to be some outliers who maybe you haven't been paying attention to. I can think back, 20 years now, like where a team like Marquette, for example, that had Wes Matthews on it, they had 3 NBA guys on it, and a guy like that maybe gets lost in the shuffle and doesn't come through in the draft, and and somehow ends up on an NBA roster and has the career he has. But somebody like that who's maybe on a team where other guys are dominating. Maybe it's a guy from Duke who's playing with Cam Boozer, who's getting all the attention and everything, who's a good player, who might be in the draft, who might play well in a couple of tournament games, and maybe his talent shows up and you go, that's why he ended up at Duke, and he was just being overshadowed. And we see it this year in the pros at the level with Cooper Flagg, who had all the attention last year, and his teammate Con Knippel, who was a good player, and people knew it, but didn't really have the flashy kind of freshman year at Duke, because of the Flagg and the other players on their team, and Charlotte saw something in him, and not just as a shooter, but as an overall playmaker, and took him at 4, and now we see what he's doing at the NBA level as a young guy. So guys like that, sometimes, if you dig a little bit deeper, you come up with something.
And to your point, and certainly now with AAU ball starting young and so many televised games and simply the internet, where you start to learn about a 12, 13, 14-year-old really good player, all these guys have been on the radar for a while. But when it comes to the potential of performing at the highest levels on the biggest stage of college basketball, what can somebody like a 3-4 game run where who he is, but he does it when the lights are like that? Is there anything there?
Yeah, it can be, again, especially you don't want to get too wild, over evaluating guys on one end or the other. Guy has a bad game, and you go, well, and they lost, and that's his fault, and you might have a tendency to wipe away all the stuff he did during the course of the season. But a guy who gets on a hot run, it just what it will do for teams, Spence, who are evaluating that, it'll make them just do a deeper dive into who the guy is and go back and watch more film of his games from the middle of the season, maybe their conference season, if they weren't paying that much attention to him, to see what the deal is. Is this just he had a good hot streak for a couple of weeks in March, or is this the kind of player he really can be at the NBA level if given an opportunity? All those things you evaluate, with the whole body of work to make sure that you're weighing it properly from what you see. Because you always have this can have a natural tendency to have the recency bias, and whatever he just did last week is what we're going with, plus or minus. Instead of making sure that you're always looking at the whole body of work that the guy was involved in.
So let's hone in on a couple of these players that we've talked about. I've got a few mocks in front of me.
I like me some mocks in early March.
Yeah,
I love it.
So, and most of the mocks continue just to kind of have the same names at the top, and it depends on which one you look at. I've got Sam Vecini from The Athletic, who I think does a pretty good job. He has AJ at 1, Darren at 2, Darren Peterson at 2, and Cam Boozer at 3. So let's just kind of go in order, and we'll start with AJ Dibonsa, who continues to show very high-level skill and has the size you want. Does the slide of BYU say anything at all? They're 4-9 in their last 13. They're 8-9 in conference. I think they're going to make the tournament, but they've got Tech and Provo on Saturday. They're really good, even though they lost last night. Last night in the Big 12 was bananas.
Yep. If
they get smoked by Texas Tech and lose in the first round of the Big 12 tournament, there's a chance they're not even a tournament team. Now, the A.J. Dibonsa story might sway some people behind the scenes to say, no, you're putting him in as a 10 seed or whatever. Sure. Have you changed your viewpoint on who A.J. is at all based off of BYU's rough slide?
No. In fact, if anything, value him a little bit more just to see his growth this year and how he's playing the game, how he sees the court. He doesn't rush into anything. He's got the athleticism. He's got the length. He's got the bounce. He's got the ability to get into the lane. And he's not a selfish player, so he's willing to make the right basketball plays most of the time. And again, he's just 19 years old, so he's a young guy. Those tools that he's got will be refined over the next few years in the NBA, and he'll be. His shooting will get down a little bit tighter, and his handle will get down a little bit more. But he's he's the real deal. He's nobody's going to be swayed by anything that's going on with BYU. They're having a rough patch. You're exactly right. My opinion, I think there's a good chunk of that is the Richie Saunders factor, because he's really a good player, and he had a lot to do with them, the first half of the season and the way they were playing and having success and playing off Dabansa and the right kid and the guy who's gotten lost a little bit in the shuffle for me. I would expect Keita to be doing more in the middle in terms of roughing guys up under the basket and rebounding more, that he has been recently. So they may have a rough tough. Hey, they could lose to Tech on Saturday. I think BYU will probably win, because they'll have that raucous crowd. It'll be Dabance's last home game, supposedly in the Marriott Center, so there'll be a big crowd. It's a late game at 8:30. A lot of stuff riding on the line. They're 20-10 now. Is that the record right
20
now?
20-10, 8-9 in league.
Yeah, 8-9. So the worst case scenario, they lose that. They lose in the first round of the conference tournament. They're 20-12.
Yeah,
they're going to the tournament.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
They're not gonna miss the tournament. So they've just got to try and get themselves internally right and focused on the things that are going to help them. Once they get into the tournament and see what their matchups are going to be. And, the tournament's always a funny thing. It's always a one-and-done thing. I don't know how they'll do because, the thing for them, Spence, is when you're looking at them in October, they're missing 3 guys that would be regular rotation guys. Mm-hmm. The big guy, and I always forget his name, who's been out for the whole season. He got hurt before they even got started. And I know Kevin Young was telling me earlier that hurt them right out of the get-go, and he was going to play a lot for them. And the Baker kid got hurt, and then Richie Saunders. So that's 3 guys who would have been in the top 8 guys in their rotation.
Are you talking about Xavier and Stanton?
I think so.
Yeah, that's him.
So
okay.
Those are guys that, but that happens with every team, and the teams that typically find their way through the tournament and end up in the Elite Eight or the Final Four, more often than not, are the teams that not only are tough, physical, and well-coached teams, but they're teams that usually have not had to deal with many, if any, injury issues to their players. And their players have been relatively healthy. And in the game of basketball, as we know, you get 1 or 2 of your key guys who are missing games or are out for a period of time or out for the season like BYU has now. That can hurt you, and you have to rely on other guys who haven't been relied on to the moment, and coming up on big moments, and so that's a tough get, but none of it's going to hurt AJ Dabansa in terms of how teams see him. I think most teams know that he has a chance to be the real deal and to be a real high-level guy at the NBA with all the tools he has.
Let's go back to Richie for a moment, because it's such a bummer for so many different reasons, not just for BYU basketball this year, but Richie, at least the narrative was, he came back to try to maybe play his way into maybe the first round after putting himself really on the radar of a lot of pro scouts last year. When the draft takes place, he will be 4 months away from his 25th birthday. Yeah. So that combined with the ACL stuff, how does that change the calculation on what he could potentially be next level?
Yeah, well, there'll be teams that'll be a ding against him because he would be potentially walking into a training camp when he's 25 years old as a rookie. Okay, most of your rookies nowadays are 20, 21, whatever. I think he's a good potential, end of the rotation type of guy because I think he plays hard at the NBA level. I think he's a hard-nosed kid. I don't think he'll score the way he scores in college, but I think he can bring you some defense, some tenacity, some toughness. He's a rebounding guy. He can score a little bit off the bounce with both hands once he gets in the lane. That's one of the things I like about him. And he always just plays forward. He never plays backwards, which is a skill in itself. He never gets down on himself or worrying about a mistake he makes. He just goes on to the next play. But, it may be a scenario where teams back off a little bit, and maybe teams say, hey, whether he gets drafted or doesn't get drafted, he goes overseas and has to prove himself over in Europe or maybe in Australia and play there for a year or two and show what he can, that he's recovered and that he's got the same pop and the same energy and same explosiveness, to his game, and then maybe somebody brings him back, a year or two later, those things you never know because there are all kinds of other moving parts that teams are considering in terms of other players and situations and all those kinds of things. And, somebody may take him late in the second round and say, we're just going to put him in the G League for a year and make sure his injury is healed and he's ready to go, and we see what happens there. And a lot of different scenarios for him, but really, really just unfortunate for a young man who really plays his heart and soul out every day and stayed at BYU, to have a big run this year with the team, and you just feel sickened when something like that happens for him and the group as a whole.
What about Keba Keita? Because you referenced earlier, Keba, of course, played up here for a little bit, and he's a shocking athlete. One of those guys where when he really, really gets up for a block or a dunk, you're just like, holy smokes, like top shelf athletic talent. When it comes to the skill set, you just haven't seen much improvement as far as pass, dribble, shoot. But a guy that can do what he can do athletically will cut a paycheck somewhere, making money playing basketball, won't he?
Yeah, he'll probably be overseas, I would think, somewhere in Europe. His game is more situated for that. In my opinion, he's a lesser version of Bismack Biyombo, who was a lottery pick so many years ago in the NBA and stuck around the NBA primarily because of his physique, his size, his willingness to set screens, to rebound, to defend, to play tough. But his offensive skill level, basketball skills have never gotten to the level that would make him one of your regular real rotation contributor kind of guy. So he's always kind of bounced around the league a little bit, but a hard worker, good attitude guy. But Keita, I think, is probably going to end up in Europe somewhere where his size and physicality will help in some of the leagues over there. He really, his game fits to me more of down in the NBL in Australia, where it's really a physical league where they let you play a little bit more rough around the basket and stuff, and he can move guys around and rebound and maybe isn't as skilled, but he'll play somewhere. I mean, that's I don't have any doubt about that. The NBA, I think, is probably pushing it a little bit in terms of his overall skill level and talent basketball wise.
What about Rob? What about Rob Wright, who, maybe 10, 15 years ago, when every NBA team seems to just want five guys between 6'6" and 7'2", or if you're San Antonio, 7'6" or whatever, the size thing is going to come back to bite him, I think. But as far as ball handling, shooting, decision making, does it just come down to the fact that he might be 6 feet tall?
Yeah. Well, again, there's been guys like him. One guy that comes to mind, who's a very good player at the collegiate level, who plays a little bit like him and similar size and whatnot, is Shane Larkin. And Shane Larkin has made a very good career over in the EuroLeague and has played for several teams over there, but has always been on winning teams, has a winning type of game, not quite at the NBA level because of his size, and maybe a half a notch below NBA level point guards, but still a solid player, a guy who can score, and a guy who contributes to winning in different programs over in Europe in the highest level outside of the NBA. So Rob Wright for me is probably somebody like that. I would think he'd probably consider coming back to school. I would guess, especially in this day and age of NIL stuff, where players can, like in his situation, if they like him and they want him to return, they have some money to offer him. He goes, well, I don't know about, if I'm going to make the NBA, if I'm going to get, but I know here I'm going to play a lot and I'm going to get paid some money, and that's that's what's going on with NIL and colleges at the moment. So that gives colleges sometimes, like a guy like him, a little bit of an edge because they can talk a kid into, hey, you're still going to get. I mean, I call it my own version of that. Is now called the Cam Rising, situation. Like, I don't know if I'm going to make it at the next level. It might be touch and go. It might be 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But if I stay where I am, I still get a nice paycheck. They like me here. I'm going to play a lot. I'm going to be one of the main guys here. Why would I change that situation at the moment? Mm-hmm. That's kind of guaranteed for me, both playing-wise and financially, and just work on my game and try and get it up to another level if I can.
Do you have any insight on the economic support Alex is getting for his basketball roster?
No.
Okay.
I have no idea.
All right.
I have to make what I think is a somewhat logical assumption that he would not have gone to the U and left the pros, where it's a whole different approach and a different daily thing in terms of recruiting and all that at the college level, without knowing that he had some kind of support that was going to help him to compete in the Big 12.
Yeah.
Big 12 is one of the big boys, if not, the biggest boy on the block at the moment in college basketball. And you got to go up against, whether it's the Texas Tech money thing or the Kansas historical thing or Baylor money thing or, whoever it is, all the teams that are in the Big 12 that are really competitive and have good resources to be able to replenish their rosters every year. The U just got into a late recruiting cycle with the timing of Alex's hire, his decision to stay with the Dallas Mavericks and see that through. The recruiting they had last year, the guys they got this year, to me, it's just my opinion, is a lot of nickel and dime players who were left over on the heap at the end of the recruiting cycle. They got them to come here for a year. I don't know how many of them will return next year, but now they've had a full recruiting cycle in place. There'll be players not only that will look to Utah and its history in Alex Jensen's place in that, but also they'll look at the fact that, I can maybe consider Kansas, or I can maybe consider Texas Tech, or maybe BYU, whatever, or I can look at the teams at the bottom where I know I'm going to go and they want me bad enough that they're going to give me 30, 35 minutes a game, and I'm going to be able to play a lot and try and help them and get in on the whatever the NIL stuff is now, how a lot of that stuff is decided upon. So I think they're in a decent position to get some guys that would want to come because they want to be the new big dogs on the block and show what they can do. And Alex and his staff will have that cachet to talk guys into that kind of situation with them, and then we see what happens.
So Jonathan Givony, Draft Express, reported on February 15th that Finn Schott, who's an Austrian big, his agent told Givony that he's committed to Utah. Now, Utah has been unable to comment on this because it's not official. 6'10", 19 years old, FIBA youth circuit, played with Jakob Poeltl on Austria's senior team this summer. So we'll see. Again, no one's been able to comment on it, but he's a good-looking player from what his measurables say, and he's 6'10". Don McHenry's a senior. He moves on. James Okonkwo's a senior. He moves on. Keanu Dawes maybe comes back. Terrence Brown. I mean, look, I just can't sit here and tell you in an honest moment that I saw that team get any better. I mean, Colorado's not very good this year. They ran them off the floor last night. Yeah. They doubled them up in the first half. I don't think anyone's asking go win the league next year. But I think a lot of Ute fans, if you're going to be asked to show up and we need people to show up to the Huntsman Center, believe me, but consistent performance is going to be the thing that actually draws fans and has them stay. What do you think is reasonable to expect next year for Utah basketball?
Well, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, Spence, because it really depends what their recruiting ends up being and who actually shows up on campus in September. And so that remains to be seen who the guys are that can get to come. The kid from Europe, I know that they have a really good foothold with looking at European kids through Martin Schiller, who's one of the assistant coaches who coached the Jazz G League team for a number of years, who's from Germany, coached in the EuroLeague over there. He knows everybody in Europe. He knows coaches. He knows players. He knows the youth system. So they have a good pulse on who those guys are that they think they might be able to get in on. I know Wes Wilcox and Alex Jensen were over in Europe several weeks ago together. It might have been for this kid from Austria. That would make sense to me. They may have a couple other kids that they're looking at over there. And again, Spence, just for our listeners, that the European landscape for players potentially entering the NBA draft has changed with all this college NIL stuff, because guys who now used to go through a youth program in Europe and in any of the countries that favor basketball, and they would typically grow through the youth system, which is to us is equivalent to the high school system. And then when they get to be 18 and they graduate from that, if they were good enough, the senior team would sign them to a multi-year contract at low money and just keep them in their program and have them on the end of the bench and be paying them $75,000 or $100,000, and the kids would be happy with that and try and work their way through that system. Now that same kid is looking at either doing that for a club team somewhere in Europe or going over to the U.S. and playing at the NCAA level, making several times more money, depending what the school is or what the offer might be. Also going somewhere like, say, let's use Utah as an example. They're at the bottom of the Big 12. Oh, I can go to Utah. Instead of staying with my club team in Europe in that regard, I can go to Utah. They're going to pay me, I don't even know, let's make up a number, $400,000 my freshman year, which is more than I would be making if I'm home, where I would be sitting on the end of the bench on my team. But Utah, I know, wants me to play, and if I show that I'm good enough and can bring something to the table to them right away, they're going to give me 25, 30-plus minutes a game to be able to play, and I'm going to be doing it in front of NBA scouts every night. And so to me, as a kid in Europe, that's a no-brainer. So if I'm getting offers from NCAA college, that's what those kids are starting to look at now, and that might be something where Alex and his staff can take advantage of that and get a couple of kids like that to come over and be part of their program.
All right, one more question concerning kind of this space, meaning the draft space, analyzing prospects and such. The 9 top prospects on this board, this is ESPN.com, are freshmen. And 13 of the top 16 prospects on this board are freshmen. And we could keep going, but we'll leave it there. I mean, 13 of the top available players, 18, 19 years old, freshmen. It feels a little bit unprecedented. Do you any thoughts as to why this is?
No, that's
just
not,
kind of
that's
like
not,
a perfect combination of.
No, it's not highly unusual. Most, again, this is a mock. These are mock drafts. Whoever does it, Spence. To be perfectly honest, some of the guys really work hard at it, and some of the guys are doing it, in the basement of their mother's home or something.
Well, I don't have access to the Jazz mock draft, so I'll use ESPN.com's.
But they were, but that's not, we'll see that it's teams do tend at times to overvalue youth and try and project skill and talent and competitiveness with kids, to the NBA level. They're going to ding someone like Richie Saunders, even if he was healthy and still playing, saying, oh, he's going to be 25 when he comes to training camp versus the kid from Kentucky who's only going to be, 19 or 20, which means in our mind, that kid has 5 more years to get better than Richie Saunders is now.
Yeah.
We think that's what's going to happen, so we're going to take the 20-year-old kid. That's how a lot of them think. But the smart teams know that, if a player has a skill, has an ability, has shown what he can do, and done it through the years like Saunders' kid has, then that's something that they want to put a value on. But a lot of teams are going to take young kids because most teams believe they have a development program. They have a culture. They have the veteran guys who can lead them and teach them, and everybody has the same mantra. At the bottom, at the end of the day, you have to make sure you're bringing in guys in your program who you're convinced are going to work hard, who are to some extent are humble in their nature of their approach in terms of understanding they have to get better. Guys who have an innate competitiveness as well as some talent and skill. These are all things, by the way, Spence, as I go down this list, checking all those boxes, that's what a kid like the Debanza kid, to me, has shown. We know that's the deal with Cam Boozer, because we know Cam Boozer. We've known him since literally since he was born. That's what he brings. You see him the other day. I'm watching some of the Duke game at NC State, and he got unbelievably scratched on his arm. His arm was bleeding. It looked like a panther or something had scratched him, and he came over the sideline. They were cleaning him up, and he's kind of chuckling with his teammates, and he's talking, and you can just see that he has that attitude that they think something like this is going to bother me. He just laughs it off. Those are the kind of guys are going to go to war with you every day, and those are the things you value when you're looking at young guys who are competitive, and maybe why you see so many young guys on there is because teams are looking at, or at least mock draft guys are looking at, guys who they think are going to get better over the next 2, 3, 4 years.
All right, coming up next, we'll do the nightly rite of passage in the NBA to try to decide whether any games are worth watching based off of teams are competing. The Jazz will be in Philly tonight. We'll do a little Jazz Nuggets. I'll do some NBA coming up on the other side. Smitty live in studio. Keep it here on ESPN 700. Tom Haberstroh sent out a tweet earlier today. The bottom 10 teams in pro basketball right now have combined to lose 40 straight games. The Bucks, the Bulls, the Wizards, the Nets, the Pacers, the Grizzlies, the Mavericks, the Pelicans, the Kings, and your Utah Jazz have combined to lose 40 straight basketball games. Richard Smith is live in studio. Look, if you're going to watch NBA every night, you just have to go up and down the schedule and decide if you – most of the games right now, not most, maybe 30 to 40% of the games right now don't even deserve a second of your attention. I know we've covered it, but I don't know what else to say. Like the Jazz are playing Philly. All right, great. Maybe there's some ace moments, but they're going to lose again.
Yeah, well, it's hard, Spence, because right now we're in that what we always just call that gray area in March, where the teams are starting to separate themselves from the haves and the have-nots, the ones making the playoffs who are going to be there unless something catastrophic happens. In the West, the Clippers, Golden State has 30 losses in 8. The Clippers have 31. Portland has 33. Then those guys would be in play-in situations, and then you have Memphis at 37 losses, so that's 4 different, and Dallas with 40, so that's 7 different. So it's going to be hard for those top 10 teams to lose enough where maybe they would get out of those play-in situations. So it's almost like those guys are locked in to some degree, again, unless something unusual happens with them. And then in the East, where you got the play-in teams, and Miami at 29 losses, Charlotte at 31, Atlanta at 31, and then you've got the dividing line. Those who would be out at the moment would be Milwaukee at 34, and the Chicago Bulls at 37. So that's 6-game difference between them and those 9-10 spots. And then you drop all the way down to Washington at 45. So Washington's 45 is 14-game difference in the loss column. So there's no way those teams are getting in the playoffs. So it's almost like the teams, here with 20-plus games to play, still the playoffs have basically decided just the pairing and where those guys are. And all the non-playoff teams are jockeying for those lottery odds stuff, which makes some of the upcoming games, kind of a shrugging moment where you go, yeah, I don't know, it doesn't really matter one way or the other, especially at a time when you've got the college conference tournaments coming up and then the NCAA tournament and all throughout the month of March, which will be highly impactful, intense, and meaningful games. And so I can easily see where the casual basketball fan is going to say, well, I'm going to spend March watching the college games because they mean something, and the NBA games really don't at this point.
This is the exercise. I did it last night, and I will do it tonight as well. Now, last night there was some good Big 12 basketball on, and I wanted to watch Utah and BYU and check out Utah State. But you just go down the list. Okay, the Mavericks are playing the Hornets. Hornets kind of a fun story. Dallas is not trying to win. Not watching that. The Magic are playing the Wizards. Magic aren't a bad team, but the Wizards aren't trying to win. I'm not watching that. The Heat are playing the Nets. Okay, maybe Miami has some decent, but the Nets aren't trying to win. Not watching that. Thunder played the Bulls. Unserious, right? They didn't even play Shea. They still won. Grizzlies not trying to win. T-Wolves beat them. Pelicans might be trying to win, but they're horrible. Lakers beat them. And then the Suns beat the Kings because the Kings aren't trying to win. 10 of your games last night included unserious teams.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, no, and you're exactly right. I mean, and with all these teams, playing in the same position, these, 8, 9, 10 teams, whatever it is that are jockeying for those lottery odds and whatnot, and this whole bit about not wanting to win and all that, with still 20 games to go. It's going to be interesting to see what the watching ratings are because, again, they're going to be going up against the college games that are meaningful, that grasp the imagination and the interest of the casual basketball fan during the month of March. And people will go, well, I don't know, the NBA, who cares? Because all these teams are trying to lose, and most of the teams who are going to jockeying around for playoff position, they're going to be in the playoffs anyway. So I'll come back to them in April when they tell me what the final deal is.
Right.
So Yeah, I don't know. It's you tell me how you get people interested in your product at this moment in that situation. That's a difficult sell, I would think.
Well, and it feels like the NBA falls back on two things: that they just signed a $72 billion media deal, and you still like the playoffs. Yeah. That's like their default. It's just hard for me to do this job authentically and accept that 5.5 months of your season is irrelevant for so many teams. Like, what does that say about your business model?
No. Well, it's look, Spence, we've talked about it before. It's very difficult to defend, and I wouldn't sit here and pretend to try and do it. I don't know why teams choose that route. Okay, that's their business. Everybody's got their own business purposes and reasons. I was reading an article earlier today on The Athletic about the history of tanking and about teams who have done it and executives who have done it years and years before, and it's not a new thing. It's prevalent this year because so many teams are doing it. There's so many teams who are willing to do it. It's interesting, you want to break it down to other athletic or sports related issues. You can bring it down to social approach, what our society is about trying to manipulate something to get something you didn't earn. How a lot of us in America now live, how we try and get something for 10 cents on the dollar, whatever it is, however we can, figure out how to get something cheaper than what it is. That's what these teams are doing, in my opinion. And everybody seems to just shrug and go, well, I guess that's it. This article I read today was fascinating because it interviewed a gentleman who's a Washington Wizards fan, has been for a long time, has three young, teenage boys who are all into sports, and they're going to the Wizards game, and he's teaching the kids about how, the Wizards don't want to win. They just want to be competitive, and they just want to make it exciting, and then we hope they lose in the last 2 minutes because they're trying to get a lottery, and you're teaching your kids that this is okay to do. And, to me, and I'm being, a little old school, a Pollyannish and whatever, I get it, but somewhere in there in that fabric, there's something about, not, teaching your kids the right thing for what it's supposed to be about, and, how are they going to deal with things when they get older and get in positions of responsibility to, say, oh, no, I learned early on, this is how you do it. You try and, get around the back door and do this and whatever, instead of just making an honest effort at whatever your business is and whatever you're trying to do. And, why everybody's chosen to do it, that's interesting. Okay. The fact that that light is being shined on them all at the same time, the fact that they're all doing it with 20 games, a quarter of your season still left. Okay. That's, none of them seem to care that much about what the outsiders think. They're just doing their thing, and everybody seems to just shrug and go about it, and throw up their hands or whatever. And it's really kind of a sad situation, I think, at the moment, at this point in time, and in the season, and in maybe just in a greater part of our society in general. That's my little soapbox deal for today.
Let me ask you this, because I don't really even know. Like, typically we would preview the Jazz Sixers game. There's nothing there. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Drawing fouls and getting to the free throw line has always been a way to expedite maybe some inefficient offensive basketball, and free throws, it's a good way to score. Always has been. It's not a new thing to want to get fouled and go to the line. It's not a new thing to maybe even try to get fouled to go to the line. It does seem like a new thing in a way that is completely counter to the integrity of attempting to play offense, whether it's Harden in the swing through, yep, Donovan in the head back, Jokic in the WWE, I'm gonna grab your arm and then fall on top of you. And look, if we're honest, John used to set some screens that were, he's going to throw his whole body into you, right? And whatever you need to do to get a competitive advantage, you should do if you're trying to win. It feels new to me, like the Lucas stuff, the Jokic stuff, some of the diving, some of the dark arts, as they say. What's your insight on this?
Well, I think everybody's going to try and play, with right to the edge of what the rules are. Jerry Sloan always used to, preach to his players, hey, there's a reason that you get called out of the game after 6 fouls, that you're not allowed to play anymore. So they give you 5 fouls to use. So that was always his mantra in terms of being a defensive-minded coach. There'd be some players who would be proud of the fact they played, 34 minutes and didn't have a foul call. Mm-hmm. And he would, the next day in practice, he'd call him on it. And he'd say, hey, you played 34 minutes, you had 14 points or whatever, you had 3 assists, did a nice thing, had some rebounds, but you didn't have 1 foul. They said, were you guarding somebody? It's try not to foul you. So, they give you 5 fouls to use. So whenever you are at a disadvantage defensively at that moment, you have to make a decision as an individual player. Do I use the foul now to make them take the ball out of bounds or whatever, to make sure they don't score, whatever the time and score situation is. But his approach was always, that's why they give them to you. So we have to have a mindset of, we use them strategically, but we use them at times. John used to set hard screens. I can tell you, my opinion was that John would go right to the edge, and he would set hard screens, but that was because that's what Jerry wanted him to do, and he always knew that he could do it until he got nailed, with a foul call on a moving screen, or maybe hooking somebody as they were trying to get through to the other side or something, and then he'd realize, okay, I used one of them, all right, and then tone it down a bit, whatever. But that was the competitiveness. That's what we're supposed to do. That's what the rules of the game are. Otherwise, they wouldn't give us any fouls. Otherwise, they'd just say, as soon as you do something, you're out. And so, it's not the same thing, but in my mind, a little bit analogous to the to the thing in golf, where golf is the one pro sport where you if you're at the highest level, you're in a tournament, you're supposed to play 4 rounds. Well, if you don't play good enough in the first 2 rounds, they don't let you play the last 2 rounds.
Right, yeah.
So that would be like in an NBA game, you don't play good enough the first half, they just tell you to pack up and go home at halftime and don't let you play the second half. Yeah. And so, there is a thing about playing hard. There is a thing about utilizing the rules. There is a thing about, like the Jokic thing the other night. Okay, did he get a star call? I thought he did. I'm usually, my job was always to try to be objective and to tell our guys, no, that's not what it is. And I was always that kind of unofficial guy on the bench. Now they have 8 coaches behind the bench who are looking at video and who are asked or trained. Whenever you see a questionable play or call on the court, you can see any team in the NBA, the head coach immediately swivels to his bench and looks at whoever his guy is behind the bench, and sometimes it's a group of guys, and their job is to give him a 5-second response about whether he should challenge the call or not, okay? We didn't have that in the days that I was working on the bench and doing that, but one of my so-called jobs was to bring that up if we thought there was something that was egregious or something, or talk Coach Sloan off the ledge or say, no, Jerry wasn't, no, our guy was moving, whatever. No, he wasn't moving. No, yeah, he was moving. Now, we didn't have video. We couldn't use it at that time. So it was always just a knee-jerk reaction about how to react to something, But nowadays, everybody's gonna, you're gonna get star calls. We got star calls in back in the day. Carl used to get star calls all the time, and and Shaq used to get fouled, maybe 30 times a game, and they called maybe half of them, maybe. And, guys would hang on him, and he was so much bigger and stronger than anybody else. The referees go, hey, look, Shaq. And he would look at him, and they go, I can't call them all. And he'd roll his eyes, like whatever, and everybody understood that, you're just trying to play within the confines of the game and trying to use whatever you have to your advantage to try and see what you can get, what you can work with.
Let me ask you about the Jazz next year, because just like whatever.
Yeah.
Let's operate off the premise, and I believe this to be the case, where we'll just kind of put the core into one bucket of Lauri Markkanen, Keontae George, Jaren Jackson Jr., Walker Kessler, Ace Bailey, those five that we know, that I feel like we know they're going to be around. Lauri, Keontae, Jaren Jackson Jr., Walker, Ace. What do you think they would – let me ask you about Nurkic. He's unrestricted. Yeah. Do you think they'd want him back, even though I feel like they're going to re-sign Walker?
Well, they have to figure out the Kessler deal. So that's going to be the interesting, Spence, because you not only are you building a roster talent-wise, and I think that's a pretty good group to start with.
Sure, yeah.
If you have that, plus presuming you end up with a top 8 pick, if you get lucky. Maybe it's one of those top 3 guys. Even if it's a 5 or 6 guy, you're going to get a pretty good player.
Another piece of the puzzle, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So now you're adding another guy into your mix. But this summer, they got to figure out Kessler. He's going to get a big number, in my opinion, from somebody. The Jazz are going to have to make a decision financially if they want to keep him, whatever that number is. I don't know what it's going to be. Some people are saying it's going to be 20. Some people are going to say it's going to be 40. It depends on who else comes out of the woodwork, because it only takes one team to come at some crazy number with him in 4 years, 160 or whatever. And he goes, well, I got to do that. Of course he's got to do that. And so then the Jazz will have a decision. Then that also, now it rolls into what do they do with Nurkic? Does Nurkic want to stay, A? B, how much does he want to stay relative to how much are they going to pay him at age 31? He's still a serviceable player and would be a good backup in a good rotation on a good team, okay? Then the interesting part to me, Spence, is they're going to have to make that decision based on next summer. You're going to have eligible extensions for Bryce Sensabaugh, which is a lesser guy, but the big ticket there in that regard is going to be Keontae George. So what do you do with him a year from now? How does he fit into your plans? Because if he's a guy you like and you think he's part of this equation, all of a sudden you put a Kessler number, you put a Nurkic number, whatever that might be, a lesser number, and then next year you add the George number. All of a sudden, Spence, you go from being under the cap because you've added Jaren Jackson to the mix with Markkanen in his numbers. All of a sudden, you go all the way up to being an over the second apron team.
Yeah.
So now, are we going to be a second apron team, meaning we're going to be in a position to pay a hefty tax burden going forward, planning ahead the next 2, 3, 4 years relative to what is the product on the court? Is the product on the court a first-round playoff team? Is it a Western Conference Finals level team? Are we paying a lot of this money for someone that's just going to be one of 5 teams, one of 6 teams, one of 7 teams? Or do we think we're going to be one of the top 3? All those things, those are all movable pieces on the chessboard, and it all comes down to how much money we want to pay for what we think we could put together as a competitive group on the floor. That, to me, is going to be the most interesting part of the decision-making that's going to come down between April and July.
Well, in the meantime, we will watch them continue to try to hold on to their draft asset down the stretch. Smitty, great to see you. Good stuff as always. Be well. We'll get you next week, okay?
Spence, as always.
The great Richard Smith. All right, if you're looking for a place to go to dinner tonight and you have not tried Burger Fusion, let me send you there. And go there tonight, okay? It's 490 South, 700 East. It is in Trolley Square. It is located just west of the Whole Foods. If you remember the old Charlie Wing Company, kind of the little diner car they had there, it's right next to that. So it's all Wagyu beef burgers. I'm telling you, it's the best burger spot that I've had here in a long, long time. It's as good as any burger spot I've ever been to. Burger Fusion, again, 490 South, 700 East. Last time I was there, I went with and this is what I usually get. It's called the Cheese Royale. It's cheddar cheese, caramelized onions, tomato, and they have this really good coleslaw they put on the burger. They've got a bourbon barbecue affair, which is applewood bacon, cheddar cheese, onion rings, tomatoes, and coleslaw. They've got awesome onion rings. They've got homemade chips. You can go the half onion rings, half fry combo, and a bunch of really, really good like side dishes and sauces. The dipping sauces, you can get ranch, honey bourbon, mango habanero, sweet chili, aioli, garlic parmesan is my favorite. Tangy Utah fry sauce, of course, as well. So it's a new spot. It is called Burger Fusion. And if you have not been, you should go tonight. You can order takeout. But I should say you can order delivery, but sometimes it'll show up cold. So I would go into the location, or you can order pickup and just take it home. Our good friends at Burger Fusion. All right, final hour of the show comes your way. Coming up on the other side right here on ESPN 700. All right, wrapping it up. Final segment of the show for today. Congratulations. You are halfway through that work week. You are one day closer to the weekend. Of local interest, the Jazz are in Philly to take on the Sixers. And that's really about it. Mammoth are off tonight. They're back in action also in Philly tomorrow. And then Utah basketball will wrap up their regular season Big 12 play at Baylor on Saturday at 3 o'clock. BYU, 8:30, late tip in Provo, welcomes in Texas Tech for senior night. RSL taking on Atlanta on 5:30 on Saturday, and Utah State taking on New Mexico. And that could be like a virtual winner-take-all at the Mountain West Conference if things kind of fall their way. So on the NBA side of things tonight, good one going on right now between the Thunder and the Knicks. Men's college basketball, Arkansas taking on Texas, Miami, SMU, Baylor, Houston. So that's one Big 12 game that's kind of worth watching. Houston, of course, a really good team. So there you go. Lou Holtz passed away at the age of 89. Very sad. Excellent college coach. and always kind of a funny character on TV. So some sad news for Notre Dame fans. How dialed in are you right now? Like college or pro hoops, if you go home right now to watch basketball, what are you watching?
It's probably going to be college tonight. You know, it depends on the slate. It depends on if there's any intriguing matchups. But, you know, we get into a little bit of tourney action. The Big 12 was wild last night and really entertaining too. So that's probably it. And it's probably more so just because we're talking a little postseason now. And that's when my antennas really go up.
The real piece of news that we need to get your take on is somehow, some way, the Dallas Cowboys have been able to finagle their way under the salary cap and have some money to spend in 2 first-round picks, so you must be juiced.
I mean, I don't hate that. Usually they overpay for a player that is, not going to produce much. They may sell some jerseys, but that's usually the Cowboys, is to get over the salary cap and do it with a few well-known pieces. So I like that they're being prudent a little bit, but we'll see when we get the results on those draft picks.
It's pretty wild that you're able to maneuver from $55 million over the cap before restructuring deals of Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Tyler Smith, and now you cleared $66 million in cap space. Pretty wild thing to be able to do. The fact of the matter is, if they can, they need several pieces on defense.
Yes.
The offense isn't that far away, but they might need every new position filled on defense.
Which is also that part of this discussion, right? They had a defense just filled with playmakers, 2-3 years ago? Mm-hmm. And when you don't re-sign those players, or you trade them away, or you run them out of town, well, then you have some space open up on the cap. So that is also part of it. Yes, they did restructure some contracts, but a lot of it is they haven't been able to extend anybody. They haven't been able to keep anyone in-house that they would like to have long-term. And so now they got some money to spend. Hopefully goes in the right direction.
Dak Prescott base salary goes from $40 million to $1.8. CD goes to $1.7. So does Smith. And they were turned into signing bonuses for cap purposes to free space. So they basically get the same amount of money, just comes in a signing bonus check. Must be nice to be an NFL player. All right. I'm not an NFL player, but I'm happy to report that I'm in pretty good shape right now as a result of my friends at Game Day Men's Health. So here's the bottom line. As we have turned our calendars to March, did you set a resolution to get back in shape or get into better shape and it hasn't gone the way that you wanted it to? Well, that happened with me a couple of years ago. I was trying to get back into shape, wanted to get in the best shape I'd been in as an adult, was frustrated with lack of progress after a few months, had a friend recommend Game Day Men's Health, and I went through their process, and I'm in the best shape I've been in as an adult and have been for 2 years, and it's because of, you have to do the work, right? You got to exercise, you got to eat right, but utilizing the process set in place by Game Day Men's Health has been a game changer. They're offering you the same deal they gave me, which is a free consultation to check your blood and then go over your levels with you. But here's the kicker. If you mention that you heard me talking about it, they're also giving you 50% off your first-year membership, so you get 50% off of all the stuff. If you want semaglutide, tirzepatide, the weight loss stuff, they've got that. I utilize testosterone, highly recommended, and peptides, also highly recommended. So go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com. GameDayMen'sHealth.com. Lehigh, Pleasant Grove, Cottonwood Heights, and South Ogden. Tell them I sent you. Free consultation, 50% off at Game Day Men's Health. All right, Porter. Thursday show coming up tomorrow. What do we got?
An abbreviated version of the drive. Utah women's basketball will cut into the show a little bit. They'll get going about 12:15, 12:30, okay. And then I'm assuming we'll be waiting in the wings until 3-ish. So we got some things TBD. We might chat with Tom Haberstroh. We might chat with our guy Ken Palm. But what I do know is your old friend Brett Hewlett will be in studio on a Thursday.
Go Braves, baby.
We'll go from there. We'll recap the Utah women's basketball game and potentially chat with a few more hoops guests as well.
So we'll be cheering for quadruple overtime for Utah women's hoops tomorrow.
You will.
You will too.
I'm producing the game. So.
Oh, then only I will. But anyway, stay tuned. We'll hop on air after the Utes hopefully get it done. Special thank you today to Pablo Mastroianni, Spencer Nelson, Tim McMahon, and Richard Smith. For any of the sound you missed from the show, go to the website, which is ESPN700sports.com. Download our mobile app. Take us on the go. The ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. Then finally, for what we do in our space, 4 hours every afternoon. Podcast page is The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's available wherever you get your shows. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments. Give us all the stars. Oh, we got our numbers today. And every time we get a good book and good ratings, I need to take a minute to say thank you so much to all of you that are consuming our show and our station. Sean's killing it too. We are leaving our competition in the dust. It's not even close. So thank you. However you consume the show, we appreciate it. He's Porter. I'm Spence saying good night. Have a great Wednesday evening. Talk to you on a Thursday drive. As always, you can catch it right here